Welcome to Unraveled Game Thoughts. My name is Wade, and I thought it would be fun to do my top 100 this year with a therapeutic twist. If you're only here for my top 100, skip this intro and just jump to my number one, where I'll be getting started. Otherwise, let's start with the basics. This is largely for those who maybe aren't used to a top 100 video or board games in general, especially if you linked to this video from my website. So it might help to have a little background. I have played over 900 different games and have logged over 5,000 plays of those various 900 games. So my top 100 games are those that I really enjoy getting to the table the most frequently, or as much as I possibly can. Therapeutically, I've done some research on the general benefits of board games and their clinical benefit. When I say I've done some research, I have read research that other people have done. I have not personally done the research. One of the largest studies I found, I'll try to cite it in the description when I get a chance, so you can look that up if you want. But it concludes that board games generally have some benefit, helping with anxiety, helping with depression, helping build social connections, helping reduce social anxiety, and some cognitive development. And I think there might be one or two other benefits. As I go through my list here, I'll try to highlight those games that I might occasionally recommend to other people. Most of these top 100, they are not the games that were involved in any of these research studies. The big one that I'm referencing or others that I've looked at. Most of those games tend to be like chess, checkers, and there's probably a handful of other games that are largely simpler, and so I can't really 100% apply the effects from those studies to the games that I have here in this top 100. However, a few of them do probably fall under that broad category of being fairly helpful in a certain category, and I'll point that out when I get to those games. For the most part, I would say board games in general provide some, I'd say, generic health benefits overall, just by nature of learning a new game, teaching a new game. And I know one of the traits that was picked up in some of the research is that it builds resilience. So probably the resiliency of playing multiple games, learning new things, and learning to win and lose graciously are all things that can be developed through a board gaming medium. So with that disclaimer about these games, let me lay a bit more groundwork for games on a list like this. So I'm going to describe some games as light, medium, or heavy. If you're familiar with board games, this will make a lot of sense to you. You have a fairly good idea as a board gamer of what light, medium, and heavy are. I am going to be, I would say games like Uno, chess, or Monopoly are akin to what I might call a light game. Fairly easy to learn and play, fairly simple rule set, quick setup, and they tend to be fairly approachable for most people. Games like Settlers of Catan, I would label a medium weight game. They have more complex rule set and a more complex gameplay mechanics. If you're new, that might feel heavy, something like Settlers, but in general, that's going to be somewhat of a medium weight game. A game like I'm using Risk as what I would call a heavy game. It might be more because of the time it takes to play a full game of Risk than it is necessarily the rule set, but that combination of length, play, setup, and strategy required, I will use Risk as an example for a heavy game, being that's a game that's more people know about and are more familiar with. So bear in mind, these terms are relative. I will err on the side of labeling games as a bit heavier than I might consider them in a general conversation with an avid gamer. And that is because some people might be watching this video who don't have a lot of experience with games, and so those things that I might call medium weight are going to feel a bit heavier to someone who's never played. So I might use terms like the heavy side of medium, or the heavy side of light, or the lighter side of heavy, or something like that. So you get an idea of like, okay, this is the category, but it's on this end or it's on that end of the category. So you have sort of a continuum in your head, if you might. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into my top 100 list. So I'm going to talk about the name of the game, the designer, the general gameplay mechanics, and the theme. And then I'll say a little bit about why it's in my top 100. And then if it has any therapeutic value, I'll tag that on at the end. Like this is why I might recommend this from a therapeutic perspective for a family or for people and clients in general. So starting with my number one game overall is Ark Nova, designed by Matthias Wiggy. And this is largely an action selection game with the theme of building a modern zoo as the background. And the mechanics of this game flow really well. I really like the artwork, the design of the game. It is on the heavier side, and most folks are going to feel that it's pretty heavy. I do think it gets lighter the more you play it and a lot easier to engage, but I could play this game repeatedly and I enjoy it every time. There's a lot of variability with the maps that you build your zoo in, with the deck. It's got a huge deck of animals and various other cards that are all kind of shuffled together, and they come into play in various ways, and it makes the game pretty much, I want to say, unique every time. It's not an asymmetrical game, but it makes every game, I feel like, a bit of a puzzle to figure out how can I get to sort of that 100-point threshold that causes the end game to occur before the other players, or time it so that maybe somebody else gets there, but I have enough things built up that I'm storing a lot of points for the end game process. So Ark Nova, my number one, fantastic game. All right, number two is Wingspan, designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. And this is an engine building game. It has some action selection involved, but there's only 4 actions to choose from. And you are going to be building an engine. And it's using, the art is gorgeous. It is by Elizabeth Sobel. And all the birds are just beautiful art, unless you can get a fan art pack that has some different art from other fans. But there are multiple expansions to this, but the base game is fairly approachable. I'd say it's medium weight, and it is, I feel, just a very pleasant game. Number 3 is Gloomhaven 2nd Edition. So 2nd Edition is designed by probably primarily Isaac Childress, and also Drew Penn and Dennis Vogel. I don't know that the other two were involved as much in the original Gloomhaven, but I choose 2nd Edition because I think it's got some nicely upgraded, streamlined pieces to it. Gloomhaven is like a dungeon crawl game. So think like Dungeons and Dragons, but with a lot more structure around the narrative. So you're not changing the narrative. You don't need a dungeon master. The game itself does that for you. And it is just very, all the characters are super unique, and you're going to have to really think through, how do I want to plan my turns? It is a co-op game. It's the first co-op game on my list here. And it's a really solid, it's just very well designed. I initially played this on a friend's copy, and then bought my own copy, and I look forward to playing it every time. It's probably about 100 to 130 scenarios for the amount of money you're paying for the game. So if you're buying the original Gloomhaven, expect to pay around $100. But if you're buying the 2nd edition, you're going to expect to pay around $250. So it's quite a bit hike up, but there has been a lot of streamlined bits and pieces added to the second edition that make it just a little bit more engaging. And the number of hours of play you can get out of this game are fairly extensive. Even having played through the entire game, the original once, I definitely want to play through the entire second edition. And I would play through it and still want to go back and play scenarios again because the characters are so fun. And even if you get through the entire game and beat the game, you still have characters that probably are not going to be unlocked. And so you might go back through and just make different choices and see if you can unlock those characters or just simply open up those characters and play the game with them and just see what you feel like your experience is like. So it offers a lot of potential. So that is Gloomhaven. Great game. 4-player generally, but you could add a 5th, and pretty heavy. Lots of rules, lots of stuff to dig into. So this is not for the faint of heart to learn. But it is a blast if you have family members or children, kids that really want that dungeon crawl experience with the narrative. This one I think is a really great fit and will give you a lot of hours of fun. All right, number 4 is Great Western Trail, New Zealand by Alexander Pfister. There are multiple versions of Great Western Trail. This one is... It's a rondel, meaning you're kind of going around the board and starting over and going around the board, and you're moving your cowboy, and then you're taking actions at whatever space you land on. And you get to decide pretty much how many spaces you move within a certain limit. There's lots of ways to upgrade your board so that it makes other actions in the game a little better for you. And ultimately, you're building a deck of sheep that you can either sell to gain benefits from selling them, or you can shear them to gain money. And there's just a lot of complex pieces in this game. I would probably say it's on the heavier side of medium is probably where I put this. There's a lot of things to think about. The rules are pretty thick to get through. Once you've learned the game, not too bad, but it is there's a lot of significant rules to learn. So I might even call it the lighter side of heavy. But the Great Western Trail New Zealand is my favorite version of this particular series, the Great Western Trail games. Number 5 is Sanctuary by Matthias Wiggy. This is like Ark Nova Light to a degree, although this one is a tile laying game. It's still action selection, so that piece of it doesn't really change a whole lot, and it's got a lot of the same animals, sort of same iconography as Ark Nova, but this one's much more approachable. So whereas Ark Nova is probably a 2.5 to 3 hour game, I think with experienced players could go longer with inexperienced players. Sanctuary is complete for 5 players and is, I would say 2 hours would be a long game, even for 5 players. It really is pretty well designed as far as the player count doesn't seem to add a ton more to the length of play unless you're just teaching everybody brand new, but this one's a lot easier to teach. So this one's probably this is probably medium weight, I'd say, overall for a lot of folks. Maybe edging toward light. But Sanctuary is a lot of fun. My wife and I enjoy it as a couple, and it's just a really easy one. If you got 5 players, I mean, a lot of games are 4-player games only, 4-player or less. But and so that kind of, if you get an extra person, it's a little harder to get everybody to the table. Sanctuary has that 5th player add that makes it a little easier to do that. Number 6 is Brass Birmingham by Martin Wallace, Gavin Brown, and Matt Tolman. Brass is an economic game that is, every player has the same player board and kind of the same industries, and you have cards that you're basically selecting what action you want to take every turn. You have to discard a card. There's a decent amount of chrome. I put this on the higher end of medium weight-wise. It's got a really nicely streamlined rule book. There is rules that change from one half of the game to the other, And then it's not like every industry is played the exact same way. There are different kinds of costs and intricate things to pay attention to when it comes to doing your economy on the main board. And you're also going to be using resources that other players put on the board as much as you might use resources that you put on the board. And other players might take the resources that you put on the board and use them, and there might be reasons you want them to do that. So this game has a decent level of complexity to it, but it is really fun from an economic management standpoint, and the loan system in the game is really good, and the game does not get old. It has a lot of good staying power. It is the #1 game on Board Game Geek in the world for the last 3 years, something like that. I can't remember. It overtook another game, and I forgot which one it overtook, but it's been the #1 game for a while now, and it could get usurped. I could see Ark Nova usurping it potentially, but there's a reason Brass Birmingham is #1. It's just a fantastic game. All right, number 8 is Heat Pedal to the Metal, designed by Daniel Skold Pedersen and Asger Alexandrov Granerud. Heat is a racing game. You're racing a car, trying to make 2 laps around the track. You're using a deck of cards that kind of determine what speed you're traveling at and have some other risky elements to the deck that you have to consider. And then there's heat that starts in your engine. Whenever you take a turn too fast, or you want to go up a gear faster or slower than you normally would, because usually 1 gear per turn you can change. And so if you want to do 2, then you could pay heat from your engine to take turns faster or shift gears. And there could be other things in the game that could, cause you to potentially use heat, especially if you're using upgrade cards and things of that nature. But it offers a very, I think, authentically feeling racing experience as you're trying to manipulate your deck to get around the track. Medium weight. I would say the rules are a little fiddly to feel your way through the first couple of times. You're gonna have to, make sure you understand how certain rules work. But it is not too terribly hard, and it plays up to, I think, 6 players right out of the gate. It might be that you can play more, like 8 when you have some expansions, but the base box offers a ton, and I think it's a blast. It's kind of, some people I run into really don't like it, and some people like it maybe a couple of times. I enjoy it. I can play it multiple times. It is frustrating at times, but it is a fun game to play. That is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. Number 10 is Obsession by Dan Halligan. He is a one-stop shop game designer, kind of does all the things, and he's a pretty impressive human being. Obsession is largely, I'm going to say action selection, but if you are a big fan of like Downton Abbey or Victorian era type of tales and stories, you will probably love Obsession as a game. Now, it has a lot of rules. I would probably say, realistically, it's probably medium, but for somebody who's like, if you've never played anything harder than Monopoly, Obsession will feel like a very, very heavy game. But it is pretty simple overall. You're building up your estate, and that basically you're buying these rooms that you're putting into your stake. There's about 5 different room types. Each room type does slightly different things. You have cards that you have in your hand that are your gentry. You start with your family and a couple of random visitors you have, and then as you go through the game, you'll be adding tiles to your estate, and you'll be adding cards to your hand. And every time you take an action on a turn, you are using one of the tiles from your estate. You're hosting an activity, and that's going to require you to have some servants. There are meeples in the game that are your servants. You'll have to provide some. They are going to require certain gentry types, male, female, maybe a male and a female. It varies on the activity. You're going to provide those gentry. Sometimes those gentry require servants as well. And you're basically kind of doing that throughout the game. And at some point, you're going to have to take a rest action so you get all your gentry back and you can keep taking more turns. So a lot of it's about timing. There are 2 orphaned a young lady and a young man. They're orphaned, and a lot of the building up of your estate and improving your reputation is about trying to woo these people to join your family. And so they're worth a lot of points at the end of the game. And there's a courtship every so many rounds in the game, and you're trying to court them and get them to come with you, and that gives you a little bit more powerful gentry card in your hand for that round. And then you're just trying to win as many of those as you can, and then hope that you end up with the most points at the end of the game. It's very point salady because you get points from like all those different things I mentioned. You get points from all of them. And so at the end of the game, you got to kind of calculate all that. If you use an app, it's usually a lot easier, but very fantastic game. Very well designed. It's just a lot of fun. And it's particularly beautiful if you really like the Victorian era and the kind of sort of some of the movies and stuff like that comes from out of that era. This is the kind of game that makes me want to like dress up in my top hat and suit and invite some people over to play a game and just talk in a British accent, have a good fun with it. So you don't have to do that, but it's the game that does prompt you to really get into the theme. All right, number 11 is Paladins of the West Kingdom, designed by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. This is a worker placement action selection. I guess all worker placement is somewhat action selection. So worker placement game, and I would say it's going to be fairly heavy if you're new to it. It's probably on the heavier end of medium for the average gamer, and it just offers a really nice tension. Every round you are picking a new paladin that's your paladin for that round. It's going to give you a couple of bonuses, and it's going to accentuate one action in the game. And their king is looking for at least 3 things. In the first round, you're going to reveal one, and you're going to reveal another in the second round, and then his last request that he's looking for in the third. Those are going to give you some points, but you're also going to get a lot of points by getting your faith, power, and influence to move up these tracks on the side of your board. You need those things to take most of the main actions in the game at more powerful levels. If you don't get those up, you will not be able to take the really good actions at a high enough level, and eventually some of those actions you'll run out of space. They'll be all taken, and there's only so many spaces for them. So it's a game where you're trying to lever up your faith, power, and influence in order to take more powerful actions and trying to get a leg up on the other players, ultimately scoring the most points at the end. But it is a extremely fun, well-designed game. It's a lot of game in a small box. That is number 11. So number 12 is Railways of the World, designed by Martin Wallace and Glenn Drover. This is a train game, kind of bidding, your pickup and delivery to some degree. You are delivering goods. You have to build track. You deliver the goods. You get a few points for the goods. You're trying to kind of manipulate, move your income up. The map is actually a map of some country or the United States, and you are going delivering from one city to another these cubes that are of different colors, and certain cities can receive certain colored cubes, and it's a variable setup every game, but it's going to be kind of dry and beige for a lot of people, but every time I've played it, I found it to be just fun and enjoyable and a nice little market kind of economy train game. And it's older, probably. I think I want to say it came around in 2010 or something. It's been around for a while. The rules kind of are old school rule book where not a lot of pictures and very generically written out, but it is a enjoyable game if you enjoy kind of a dry economy game. Number 13 is Wayfarers of the South Tigris, also by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. And whereas the West Kingdom games, there are 3 of them, and then there's 3 South Tigris games, the West Kingdom games deal with like some kind of deck management. Each game has a sort of a different form of deck management in some way. And worker placement, deck management and worker placement. The South Tigris series is usually some form of tableau building and dice management. But the way those dice are managed and the way those tableaus are built in all of those games are very different. Wayfarers, it's you're kind of exploring land and sea and space above any of the land and sea cards. And so it's a tableau builder, but it looks really pretty. The cards are really nice, and the dice manipulation piece is pretty creative. Definitely on the medium side, as games, probably the heavier end of medium as games go. And if you're newer, it's going to feel pretty heavy. There's a fairly decent rule set to work through in the game, but once you get familiar with one of their games, it makes sort of the others a little easier to learn along the way. Very colorful, very pretty art for the South Tigris and West Kingdom games. All right, number 14 is Barrage by Simone Luciani and Tommaso Battista. Barrage is an economic game where you're kind of generally trying to build dams on the main board and like parts of dams, and it's really aggressive. You're trying to get in other people's way and prevent them from being able to utilize their dam as efficiently. There's like 4 waterheads, and so you're trying to build your dam strategically in certain areas. Certain areas of the board are a little bit more expensive than others, so there's a lot of like kind of levering up your ability to have more money and be able to build more. You have a player board that gives you some bonuses as you build out dam parts and pieces, and it's a very fun strategy like game. Kind of has a feel almost like a Brass Birmingham type of feel to it, but it's a fantastic game. A little bit more setup, I think, than Brass, but not by a lot, and it is an absolutely enjoyable economic game. Number 20, nope, 14, 15, number 15 is Reforest by Sebastian Berner Wong. Reforest is a small box game. It's about yay tall, yay wide. It is similar to Wingspan, where it's kind of an engine building game. You're building trees, and you're building trees on top of trees, which creates an understory, and you're trying to get that forest to work together. You're kind of building a forest in a pyramid, so 3 on the bottom, 2 in the middle, 1 on top. It's very quick. Probably takes an hour or less to play the game, and I would say the rules are fairly simple, but it has some strategic depth to it. So I'd probably put it in a medium range for a lot of folks. There could be those that argue it's light, but given the number of symbols and text on the cards and such, then I think it's probably more medium. And if you have the expansion, it definitely becomes a little bit more on the slightly edging toward the heavier side of medium, but not super heavy at any point. But it is a beautiful game, and I love that it's a simple small box game you can take almost anywhere. Number 16 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak by Min and Elwyn. This is kind of, how would I describe this? A little bit worker placement, a little bit of deck building, a little bit working your way up a technology track on the side of the board. A little bit of those things all working together. Kind of an Indiana Jones theme on top of the, that's kind of the theme of the game. So you're exploring ruins, which opens up new action spaces, and you have to use your resources to pay, usually to go to action spaces, and you're trying to leverage that up to get up the technology track on the side of the board and ultimately score as many points as you can. And it's got a lot of pieces and a lot of color, and it probably looks like a way more complicated game than it is. I'd say it's solidly medium. And if there's one that's a little bit more approachable from a midweight perspective than perhaps some others, I feel like this one is slightly more approachable, especially without any expansions. I play with like an expansion that adds characters, which makes it more fun to play the game. A little bit of asymmetry between players, but you could play the base game and have a good time with it. And there's still two sides of the board, and there's a lot of complexity even with the base game. So that is number 16. Number 17 is Viticulture. The Essential Edition specifically is kind of I think it's it might be called Tuscany. Anyway, I have every expansion for the game, all in one box. And the most recent one was called Bordeaux, which kind of accentuated the board, made it a little more interesting. But it is largely, this is designed by Jamie Stegmaier and Alan Stone, and this is largely a worker placement game designed around the theme of making wine. So it plays up to 6 players. It is, I think, really not too terribly hard to learn and offers a decent amount of complexity for a worker placement game, and is it's just a fun, enjoyable game, and has stayed in my top 100 for, I think, most of the years I've done a top 100. It's been up there, so it's a lovely game. Number 2018. 18 is Ezra and Nehemiah, designed by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. This is going to be a heavier game. Trying to think what to call it. So this is a little bit like Paladins. There's some elements of it that feel very much like Paladins. You're not really building a tableau. It's more action selection than anything else. I'd say very creative action selection. It is set in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. So if you're familiar with any Bible stories, this is when Jerusalem was destroyed, but then Ezra and Nehemiah came with a group of people from, I think it was Babylon or Persia, or both at different times, and they rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. So you're clearing away the rubble that was there, and then you're building walls on top of it. And it's very crunchy, but it's very fun. It offers a lot of really cool juicy choices between the action selections. So if you like a Bible themed game, this probably you might enjoy this, although it is a pretty heavy rule set. However, I would also argue this is a really great game that is not, I wouldn't call it religious. So it's not like Ezra. I think some people avoid it because it's named after Bible characters, and it's not a religious game. It's just a action selection game that's really well designed that just happens to have that theme on top of it. So very intriguing, definitely lots of replay value on that, and offers all the boards are asymmetrical, so every player plays with a slightly different board. They work kind of the same way, but they have slightly different starting resources, and gives you a little bit of you might go for one thing over another based on what your board is like. So that is Ezra and Nehemiah. Number 19 is Spirit Island by R. Eric Royce. And this is a cooperative game. This is one that if I feel a client might have the propensity to digest a larger rule set, I might recommend this as a way of working on your synergy skills with another human being. It is a co-op that requires all the characters in the game are very different and operate. There's some similarity in how they operate, but the cards and the things, their strengths and weaknesses are very, very different from one character to the next across the game. And so you have, I forget how many are in the base game, quite a few. There are expansions you can add that make the game a little bit more meaty and add some more dynamics to the game that I think are quite fun. But you could get the base game and learn it, and it's going to be on the heavier side of medium, but it is fantastic and a lot of fun as you're trying to you play as a spirit and you're trying to chase the invaders off the island that are invading your island, and they are aggressive. And so you have to really leverage your spirit powers and time when you're going to be kind of more restful and build up, and when you're going to be really aggressive and kind of go after the invaders, and you have to work with the other players pretty synergistically to make it happen and be successful. But yeah, lot of fun. Spirit Island. Number 20 is Inventions, the Evolution of Ideas. This is designed by Vital Lacerda. This is the first of a few Vital Lacerda games in this top 100 list. And Inventions, the Evolution of Ideas is quite heavy. I am probably going to struggle to say what kind of game. This is kind of a civilization game. I mean, your people that you put out on the map are kind of your currency that you're using in the game. And it is very heavy. It is quite a complex puzzle that you're putting together. But I think it's a lot of fun. And I love the theme of the inventions of things and how they progress over the course of the eras of the game. Definitely is a pasted on theme, but I think it's a really good one, and I love the design and how it all works together. So very complex. Takes a while to teach this one because it has even knowing how to play the game, it takes a different a certain organization to teaching it so people can grasp the different concepts in the game and how they work together. But lots of fun. Number 21 is Terraforming Mars by Jacob Fixelius. Some people might be shocked that this is so far down the list. That doesn't mean it's not a good game. It's just we're getting into my 20s, and it's still there is not a game on this top 100 that is not a fun game. Terraforming Mars is just more well known. It's kind of in the Wingspan. It's probably more well known than Wingspan. I think more people probably play Terraforming Mars than they do Wingspan. It might be just a step ahead of Catan as far as like modern games that are known. But it is I hate to call it semi-cooperative, but you are kind of working together to build up the oxygen level, the oceans, and the temperature, to get the temperature to go up on Mars, so that it's habitable. And as you're doing that, you're trying to be the person who gains the most points based on the cards that you play in your tableau. All your cards are going to have some kind of tag when you play them. And those tags can sort of become either allows you to play other cards that require certain tags, or can let you meet milestones, or help you with other things in the game as you go through the game. But it is a fun kind of engine building, tableau building, Mars themed game. Number 22 is The Gallerist by Vital Lacerda. This is fairly heavy, but it is a very beautiful Neapolitan colored game. Almost all of Lacerda's games, I think, have art done by Ian O'Toole. It's gorgeous. This one's themed around the idea of discovering artists, displaying their art in your museum. The art in the game, I think, is actually designed by real artists and incorporated into this game. And it's just a gorgeous game. It's fun to play. You only have 4 action spaces that you're going to. This one, I think, kind of introduced the idea of a follow action. There might be other games that had follow actions before this, but this is the one I first remember playing, where it's like you take an action, and if you're taking a main action, there's potential that some other player might get, like if you're taking the space that they were in, then you're knocking them out, and they might get to follow your action. And they have to, spend some resource to be able to do that. But if you can time it well and have your resources managed well, you can end up taking a lot of extra actions in the game just by nature of following people and just kind of reading the room and seeing who's going to take an action, where are they going to take the action. Maybe I can get multiple actions out of the things I'm trying to take, what I'm trying to do with my artists. So, largely you're trying to buy art cheap and sell it more expensive in order to score the most points in the game. But that's a very streamlined description of how all the mechanics work. So it's fairly complicated game. Number 23 is Kanban EV. This is again also by Viticulture. Again, this is a fairly complex game. I would say this is probably the easiest one to teach and the easiest one to learn of the games, but it still has a significant level of complexity. And this one's designed about you're working in a car factory, and each action space of the board is a component of the car factory. There's the testing, there's the assembly line, there's getting the car designs, and some of the other factions, and then there's a supervisor, Sandra, that moves around the board, and if she happens to be in your space at the end of a turn, then you're going to get judged on how good you are doing a certain thing in your section of the factory. So you can suffer some consequences if you are not judged well, or you might gain a benefit if you are judged well. So it's a pretty interesting and pretty fun Viticulture design. Number 24 is Trickerion, designed by Victor Peter and Richard Amon. Trickerion is a pretty heavy worker placement action selection game around the theme of developing magic tricks that you are going to perform in a show. And so a lot of the game is designed around building up to a performance and being able to time things well in your performance. You have to gather resources that you're going to be using for your tricks. And one of the unique things is the resources you gather are actually not disposed of when you are getting a trick or performing a trick. You keep those resources, and then you might get that trick back and reperform it later, or you might leverage them up into, try to use as many of those resources to get the next higher level trick. As you get to do better tricks, the more points you get in the game. But it is a really neat theme, and it is a lot of fun to play. I've probably only played it like 2 or 3 times, but it's largely because it's not available on Board Game Arena. I think there are other places you could play it online, but I largely prefer to play games in person or on Board Game Arena because it takes out some of the overhead and makes it pretty easy to play online without having to worry about messing up rules or anything like that. But Trickerion is an absolutely lovely game. Number 25 is Nivavellir by Sergei Lagat. Nivavellir is it an engine building? It's like a set collection game. You're drafting dwarves from a tavern. Each of the, I think, 6 types of dwarf, maybe 5. I think there might be 6. I believe there's 6 of them, and each one scores differently based on how you gather a whole bunch of a particular type of dwarf. You're going to score more points, generally speaking. And then there's also a mechanism by which if you get a set of all the dwarves, all 6, one set will give you a hero. And so every set you create gives you a hero. Sometimes you set it up right, you can trigger it to where you get a hero, and you put that, and now, oh, no, that triggers me getting another hero. And you really want to leverage the heroes as well as developing your points with just the various types of dwarves in the game. So pretty interesting, a little more complex rule set than what I think the game feels like it should be. But it's not terribly hard. I'd say in the lighter end of medium. And it's just a pretty fun puzzle to play up to 4. I think it's 4 players. I might play 5. I can't see it on the box up there, but I think it's possible it plays up to 5 players in the base game. So pretty fun. Nivavellir. Number 26 is Orleans by Rainer Stockhausen. Orleans is kind of a beige Euro style game. It is a bag builder, meaning that you are going to have, you start with like, I don't know, 4 or 5 tokens in a bag. And I think at the beginning you draw 4 to start your turn. So there might be 5 to start with. I can't remember in my head, but they're your base tokens. You draw them, you can play them. But every time, most of the actions you take will give you another token. There are a few other actions. There's some different other things you're doing in the game to gather either food or resources. And then you can also send some of your characters onto a beneficial deeds board. Can't do that at the beginning with your base people. But as you get people. You can increase the amount of tokens you get to draw every round to a certain point, and at some point you might have too many of a certain type of token, so you send them to the beneficial deeds board, and that gets you some more points. Money in this game is points, and you play 18 rounds, which sounds like a lot, but it's not. It goes pretty fast. I mean, you only have a handful of actions you can take on a given round, and then once everybody runs out of workers, you're kind of then it goes on to the next round. So really fun. Been around. It feels like an older game, but I don't know how old it really is. It might be like a 2014, something like that. But it's a fun game, very fun Euro game. Number 27 is Castles of Burgundy, special edition, specifically in this case, by Stefan Feld. Castles of Burgundy is a tile laying game. You are going to be drafting. You roll 2 dice, and your dice numbers are going to determine kind of where you can take a tile from, and or if you've already taken tiles, where you can place them in your player board. You're ultimately trying to build out your player board, and I'm trying to think what ends the game. It might be someone placing their last tiles in a board. No, it's just rounds. It's a round. I think it's a round tracker. Yeah, there's rounds because there's like these goods that come out, and as they disappear, you have a set number of turns in the game. I think it's like 25, and they are. But it's the special edition I have is very colorful. It's very fun. It's one of those games that even though my kids aren't really into games, when they play it, they always have fun. They always enjoy it, and it just offers a nice little fun strategy decision-making process. Multiplayer solitaire, so no one's really aside from taking tiles off the main board. So if you take a tile, then somebody else can't get that tile. That's the only way that you're really getting in the way of other players. So you can play strategically that way, kind of like hate draft something. We don't usually play that way in our family. We're very nice, so we tend to just go after the things that we're going after. If it happens to get in somebody's way, then that's fine, because as long as you're not doing it just to mess somebody up, then we tend to be pretty nice, I think. Number 28 is Unconscious Mind by Johnny Pack, Laxas Yoma, and Antonio Zax. I think it's Johnny Pack, Laskas Yoma, and Antonio Zax. 4 different personages. It is an action selection game around the theme of Freudian unconscious mind. You're healing clients, and they have like a clear plastic grief layer over them that has a little bit of stuff on it, but it's like that client has grief, and then they have a latent dream and a manifest dream. And so if you pay certain symbols that you acquire in the game, inspiration, they're called inspiration, like the different, there's a word for each type of inspiration, but you pay inspiration to heal your clients via their dreams, and then you could eventually remove the grief layer, and then after that you can even just fully heal them all the way, and then they give you benefits, either in-game points or in-game powers over the course of the game. So you're ultimately healing the clients, taking different actions to go about building up resources to do that. It is quite fun. It is extremely pretty. And I even have an expansion called a Nightmares expansion. I haven't even used it yet, but I have it. But it adds additional just complexity to the game. Fairly heavy, but very fun, along the lines of with that theme of psychology behind. So ironically, I don't know that it's any more therapeutically helpful than any of these other games, but it's a fun game around the idea of, to some degree, therapy. So I largely got it because it was called Unconscious Mind and had to do with therapy. And so I thought thematically that will be really fun, and it looked like it was going to be good enough mechanics to enjoy. And I would say the mechanics are slightly better them good enough. They are in my, it's made my top 28. So it's a really enjoyable game to play. Number 29 is Too Many Bones by Josh J. Carlson and Adam Carlson. This is essentially a dungeon crawl. You're going to be operating as what's called a gear lock, which is your character. Your character is a gear lock, and you have dice. The game is called Too Many Bones because as you improve your gear lock, you're gaining more dice that you can use for various skills that they have. All the gear locks are different, and they do very different things. This is a fairly intensive rule set around how to use those dice in order to go out and to fight the baddies. The baddies, that's what they're called in the game, that you're going to have to fight in this game. This is a pretty expensive game. I got it in a trade, but the production quality of this game is like off the charts. I am not sure if I have another game with as high a production quality as this one. You could just about take this game and play it in a pool, and the game would be fine because like all the cards are like plastic or something, and it's neoprene mats, and like it's just really impressive game pieces. But it's not that hard to set up and play, and it's got a really engaging play style for a dungeon crawl. So it's a cooperative. So if you have family members that would really enjoy kind of a, hey, we just want to go fight some stuff in a dungeon, like this is a really fun one. Now, I don't think this is as advanced as Gloomhaven. The story doesn't have the depth to it, and it's a little this one's probably a little easier to set up and take down than Gloomhaven would be. This one's going to cost you probably actually this would probably be slightly cheaper than the Gloomhaven, but with probably not quite as much replayability, but not too far off either. And this one's also going to be one of those games that like you're going to buy the base game, and you're going to kind of want to add some things to it the more you play it. So you probably would end up investing like $300, maybe more, depending on how much you wanted to upgrade or how many special characters you want to add, because it starts with 4 gear locks that you have available to you in the base game. But as you add more, you can add other gear locks to these games. You can buy them independently that you can use with the base game. So, and it does take up a fair amount of space. That big giant box here in the middle, that is Too Many Bones, and it's a fairly large box. So I don't really like having large boxes in my collection for the most part. I can avoid it, I will. However, when it's a game like that, it's a really good game. I cannot point my finger in this camera very well. Number 30 is Scholars of the South Tigris by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. Again, this is in the South Tigris series. This is dice manipulation, action selection, around the theme of you're translating scrolls that give you end game points in some form or fashion. That's a very like small description, but it's fairly complex how you're doing it. The interesting thing about the dice selection in this game is you have primary colored dice, yellow, red, and blue, and you have secondary colored dice, purple, orange, and green. And depending on the action in the game, some actions take a color, some actions require a number, because you can use up to 2 dice, so you can get anywhere from a 1 to a 12 for an action number, and some require a combination of both. And so you're using your dice, and you're using meeples that can also influence the color of your dice and the number of your dice, but you only have red, blue, and yellow meeples, so you can only really influence the primary colors too much. But you can change the color of secondaries to primary colors, but you probably wouldn't want to do that most of the time. Secondary colors are in general better than the primary colors. And so that's how you're doing your action selection, is using the colored dice and stuff. And so that helps you figure out, there's a lot to think about in the game, but it is a lot of fun. It's very colorful. It's very pretty, and I used to have it higher than Wayfarers, but I think recently I've decided I like Wayfarers just a little bit better. But Scholars is pretty phenomenal. It's a pretty fun game to play. All right, number 31 is Lisboa. This is, again, by Vital Lacerda. This is a very heavy game. This one's themed around the city of Lisboa, which was destroyed by earthquake, flood, and fire. And kind of similar to Ezra Nehemiah, you are clearing away the rubble, and then you're building up things in the around the areas you clear to some degree. This does not play anything like Ezra Nehemiah. It's a very different game. This one I think is a lot more complex and a little bit harder to learn than Ezra Nehemiah, but it is a lot of fun. It's very crunchy. If you're really into something that's kind of crunchy with a really fun theme built on top of it, I think Lisboa it's a great game. I only recently played it in the last year. It was several years before I finally got a copy of my own, or even played anybody else's copy. So, but I've really enjoyed it quite a bit. Number 32 is The Wolves by Ashwin Kamath and Clarence Simpson. This is an action selection game for all intents and purposes, but it's a little bit area control. You have a pack of wolves and you are moving them around, and you're trying to build dens, and you're trying to howl at other lone wolves to turn them into your pack wolves, and it unlocks things on your board as you go about the game. But it's a fairly short game. I'd say an hour and a half, maybe. It's not too terribly hard to learn, but it is a really, I like the theme. I'm not really even a big fan of area control kind of games, but the theme of this one was so captivating, and the action selection mechanism is fun, and simple enough that I honestly thought we'd play it more than we do play it, but I really like having the game. Like, it's a fun game to pull out and teach, and it's got fun mechanics as you go about trying to have the best pack of wolves. Number 23 or 33 is Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on Cursed Island by Ignatia Trzewick, I can't pronounce his last name, and Joanna Tijanka. Robinson Crusoe is a co-op game. This is one that I might sometimes therapeutically recommend to people as a fun co-op with a great narrative adventure behind it. It is quite hard, and I probably wouldn't play it with younger children because it would be, you can get poisoned or you can die. Technically, if anybody dies, you lose the game. So to win the game, you have to defeat whatever the objective is you're playing on the island, and you have to not die. And you can play up to 4 players, I believe. But it's heavy. It's got a lot of setup. It's got a lot of rules, but it's a lot of fun. I have never played Robinson Crusoe and not had a really fun time and a great story out of it. You feel like you're getting into what you're doing thematically as you go about doing it. I'm going to go hunting, and then there's the mechanics around that, or I'm going to go searching for something, and there's kind of the mechanics around that. And there's always potential for something bad to happen, because almost everything you do, you got to roll dice and see what your dice outcome is. Were you successful? Were you unsuccessful? Did you just waste a turn because you were completely unsuccessful and you got poisoned? There's a lot of bits and pieces, but it's a really fun game. Number 34 is Inventors of the South Tigris. This is by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. In my opinion, this is the heaviest of all the South Tigris games. Largely, I guess you might call it a tableau builder. There are inventions. You have an invention board, and that has a word on it, and then there are invention cards. And so when you put the card on top of the board, it creates it's like the word from the board plus the word from the card is what that thing is that you're inventing. So as you go through the game, there's a lot of different inventions that come out that are always different every game, and that's kind of cool. What's really interesting is like like if you invent something, it kind of goes to this like group area below the board. So it's not like your invention. And so you could be the creator, and then someone else can come and upgrade that invention or test the invention. And there's all kinds of things you can do with the invention. And every invention, once it gets to kind of it's created, it's tested. There's a point at which like it's going to be an end game scoring for whoever designed it and whoever built it. And so there's a lot of intricate mechanisms for trying to leverage, like, okay, this gives you points for this, so that's going to influence kind of the things I want to go for in the game over here. It's pretty tough. It's a pretty meaty game, and I've only played it a couple of times so far, but I find it pretty enjoyable, and I think it's one that we're going to want to get to the table more down the road as we just have more time to get plays in and such. But Inventors of the South Tigris. Number 35 is Finspan by David Gordon and Michael O'Connell. Finspan is kind of like Wingspan with fish. Now it doesn't play exactly the same as Wingspan. It's not like if you did Wingspan, you're just doing the exact same game, but with fish. But it's similar. It's an engine builder. Instead of, playing your birds and kind of triggering them right to left, you are doing fish and you're diving. And then depending on how many fish you built in a particular area of your board, you are gaining various things when you do that. So it's a very similar mechanism. Probably the easiest of the span games: Finspan, Wormspan, and Wingspan. And Finspan is probably the easiest one to learn and approach. I still think Wingspan is the best one, but I enjoy Finspan largely, I think, because of the theme of fish. And there's fish. There's some level of learning that you could gain from Wingspan or Finspan because you can read the text on the cards and they are real fish. They're not like imaginary fish or anything like that. And so I think it makes it, I like those nature themed games that have to do with things that actually exist in the world. I think those are pretty fun. All right, number 36 is Blood Rage by Eric M. Lang. And Blood Rage is a battle royale for the most part. Now, you could argue it's action selection. There's probably an argument for that. But basically, you have a map of gradually being destroyed areas that are set in a Viking universe. And you're going to be putting your figurines on the board in various places, and you are going to explore and do battle in different areas. And you're going to be summoning some monsters that might help you fight. All kinds of it's just like you're just going after it, trying to get points. And I think it's round limited by a number of rounds. I forget exactly how that works. Eventually, the whole island is destroyed, so I think that's the timer in the game to some degree. But it's battle royale, and there's a lot of tricky things you can do because all the different Viking, whatever your personage does a different thing, and so there are ways that you can win by just overpowering people and killing them. There are ways you can win by kind of being tricky and like actually using your deaths to support your win condition for the end of the game, and then there's combinations of those things in between. So it's a pretty, it's not my style of game again, but it's one of those that it's pretty fun to play whenever I play it. And it probably just gets to the table less at my house because it's not my first go-to. Most of my family doesn't really like those style of games, but every once in a while it's fun to have a game where you just pull those kind of games out and just have a fun go at it. Number 37 is The Game Makers by Ben Rossett. I only played this a handful of times. I don't actually own the game, but I have a friend who owns it, and I played it on BGA. And the theme is kind of what makes this game. The action selection and all the way the game plays there's nothing terribly new about any of that stuff. But it's also pretty fun, and it's simultaneous gameplay for the most part, which makes the game go really fast. And ultimately, you're trying to build you have a tableau that's I think it's a 4x3, and it's kind of your game shelf. And these are the games that you're making. And so you're gathering resources, and resources are either going to be components that you use to build the games for your tableau, or they are going to be things that upgrade your player board so that you get other benefits in either during the game or at the end of the game. And it just, because it's all the cards, the things that you're building to put in your tableau, they are pictures of actual board games. So as a board game player, it's super fun. It's just kind of enjoyable. And there's always a little tension in my head. It's like, I don't like that game. But the game itself might have like a point scoring thing that I want to use for my tableau. So I kind of enjoy that like subtle kind of corny tension that I feel between, do I want to put this in my tableau? It's not a game I like, or do I want to use it as a resource to build some other game I like? But ultimately, each game kind of has some kind of scoring mechanism, and so you want to stack as many of those things as well as you can, so that you get the most points at the end of the game. Number 38 is Sea, Salt, and Paper by Bruno Cathala and Theo Riviere. Kind of like poker. I kind of think of it as like almost like a lighter or a poker game. It's got a deck of cards that have like origami art on them, and some of the cards can be paired together, and they can score you a point, and they can give you some kind of an action in the game, like stealing another card from a player, taking a top card off the deck. You have a deck of cards and you have 2 discard piles. And so when you start the game out, start with the deck and you start 2 discard piles. And so when it's your turn, you can either draw 1 card from the top of either of the discard piles, which are face up, or you can draw 2 cards off the deck, look at them, keep one in your hand, put the other face up on one of the discard piles. And at some point in the game, someone will have accrued 7 points at least. And whenever you accrued 7 points, you're not telling anybody what's in your hand. Now, if you've played cards out, they might know what you have to some degree, but they don't know what's in your hand. And so when you have accrued 7, you have the option of saying stop. Everybody lays their cards down, everybody counts their points, you go to the next round. You could say last chance, in which you're taking a gamble. You're saying, I think I have the most points, and I don't think anybody with one more turn will be able to beat me. So you say last chance, you lay all your cards down, everybody else gets a turn. If you have the most points, then you get this another bonus in the game in addition to the points you scored, and everybody else just gets like kind of that same bonus, but it's far less than the number of points they would have scored in, I would say, 99% of cases. If you lose your bet and somebody else scored more points than you, everybody else gets their points. You only get that bonus, but you don't get any of your normal points. So there's a gamble there. And the goal is to get the 40 points first. So you play a number of rounds until somebody has reached 40 points, and then you kind of see who is highest above that threshold, and they win the game. But Sea, Salt, and Pepper, really fun, small box game, easy to take around the places. Has a couple of small expansions that they add a little bit, but not too much to the game, and it's pretty low overhead as far as rules go. Number 39 is High Society by Rainer Knizia, and it is a bidding game. It is essentially a small deck of cards with a twist. You can play up to 5 players. Everybody starts with the same amount of money, and you shuffle the things that you're bidding on, and you put them out. There are 4 cards in there that have a darker background. When that 4th one comes out, instant end. You're done. You don't know when that's going to come out. Sometimes it's the very last card. Sometimes it might be early on in a deck. So you actually don't know how much you're going to get to bid on. And so it's relative. When somebody puts out a 3, how much are people going to bid on a 3? And you can have some mental idea of what you think it's going to be, and you don't know how those cards are going to come out. So could be the 3 wins for the round. But the catch on the game, there's 2 catches really. One is at the very end, after all that 4th card comes out and you end, you count up all the points. The first thing you do before you even count points is you see who has the least amount of money. Whoever has the least amount of money, instantly out of the game. You can't win. You go to the next the next person who didn't have the least amount of money, and they win the game. So a lot of times the person who won the most cards actually ends up losing because they spent all their money doing it. So it's really good tension in the game. And there are a few cards in the game there's 3 cards that are negative cards. and you're not bidding to get them, you're bidding to not get them. And so whoever actually passes and takes the card, they actually get to keep their money. Everybody else loses their money. So there's a huge part of the game where you're like trying to drive up the cost and get people to go out of money, maybe so that you can be the person with the least amount of points, but have enough money that you didn't get knocked out at the end. If there's a tie, everybody tied gets knocked out. So like the two people that had the highest scores, but they both had the same amount of money at the end of the game, and it was the least, they're both out, and then the next person wins. So really interesting twist, very small box, plays in about 15 to 20 minutes at most. Number 40 is Great Western Trail 2nd edition. Very similar to the Great Western Trail New Zealand. This one's slightly more streamlined, a little bit simpler. This is around cows instead of sheep, but it operates much the same way. I would say New Zealand's better because it just takes every mechanic in the game and makes it a little bit, it's like all the things you want from, the little things that you might have ironed out if you were like, well, I kind of don't like this, or I don't like that, or I wish this was like, it's kind of a deck builder, but the 2nd edition doesn't quite make deck building that easy. New Zealand fixes that and makes it easy to have deck building. And whenever you add those deck building cards to your deck, they usually just give you a bonus and then you just draw another card. So you're not like in 2nd edition, if you get an objective, that takes up a card in your hand, and you have to either play the objective or find a way to discard it until you can get either get it back later in the game or whatever. So those extra cards that are not cow cards in Great Western Trail 2nd edition are actually taking up space in your hand. Now, you don't get a lot of them. Nowhere near as many cards for the deck building pieces in Great Western Trail New Zealand, but it's just a little simpler, I guess you could say. You could learn the game with 2nd edition, and then if you just really like the game, then New Zealand would be the next step up, potentially. There's another one called Argentina. It didn't make my list. I played it before. It's good. I like it. I don't like it, but it's one of those games where I don't feel like I need to have a copy of every version of it. Like, I like New Zealand the best, so that's the copy I have. Great Western Trail 2nd edition probably be the other one I would consider having on hand, because it's a good way to introduce people to the game who aren't used to it. New Zealand can feel like a lot because it does have a few more mechanical pieces in the game that the 2nd edition does not have. So that is Great Western Trail 2nd edition. Now we're going on to 41. And that is Carnegie by Javier Jorge. Carnegie is, I guess, it's action selection. It is very unique. It's on the heavy side, learning wise. It's I want to say it's hard to describe because it is kind of a unique game in how it plays, but you are ultimately, it's action selection. What's interesting is when the player who's kind of the person who gets to choose the action moves around the board, and you can see other people's board and kind of what they're potentially trying to do. And so when someone chooses an action, everybody gets to take that action. And so there's a little bit of you want to be kind of in a position when you can see the actions that are coming up, because the action board's right there, and it's going to have to be one of these actions. So you're kind of trying to assess which action is going to be chosen the most in a particular game, and how can I set myself up to where I can at least do something whenever other people choose an action. When you choose an action, you're going to choose the one that's most optimal to you. But if you can be able to do as much as possible when other people choose actions, then that puts you in a better position to kind of get more out of the game. So it's a little bit of an economic game. It's a little bit action selection. There's some tracks that you're moving up to gain more income. And the way you gain income and resources is pretty interesting, because you're sending your meeples out onto the board and then you're pulling them back. And then you have to get them to move around your board to get back into their offices where they can be stood up, and then you can take those actions again with those meeples. So fairly complex, really fun game though. And it's one that kind of surprised me. I didn't know I'd like it as much as I do. But I played it many times for a long time, and I haven't gotten the box out for a while, but it is an enjoyable game that I'm looking forward to getting it to the table again. It's one of those games I'll probably get out and try to get people to play like several times in a row before I set it back on the shelf again. All right, number 42 is called QE. I forget what that stands for, but it's Q period E period, so it's an acronym. It's by Gavin Birnbaum. This is a bidding game. What makes this one unique is you are playing as a country and you are bidding. These things come out that you bid on. I forget what it is particularly you're bidding on. It's like these tokens, and they represent other countries or something. It doesn't matter what you're bidding on, but you're bidding on things, and it's set collection. So you're kind of bidding on something that adds to your set collection of some sort. And when you bid, the person who is revealing the tile and then setting the initial bid price, they're secretly writing down their bid. Any number they want. Could be $1 billion, could be $1. But they're hiding that. Everyone else secretly writes down their bid, and then everybody reveals at the same time. Whoever has the highest bid, they get the token. It's as simple as that. The catch is there's like a benefit at the end of the game if you have bid the least amount of money for your set collection. So that's a little bit of an incentive to kind of keep the bid low. And I think there's a penalty for whoever spent the most money for their set collection. I think it's fairly significant. So it's a really interesting bidding game. I think it plays like up to 5 or 6 players. So you can really, the game can change every time because it's an open bid and you can bid anything. It's really interesting to see how that market gets set every single day. So a lot of fun. QE. Number 43 is Art Decko by Tatewu. And this is a market game. There's actually a market board that has a marker for each type of art and what its value is, as well as the coins themselves have kind of like a value. And that value for the coins doesn't actually change the in-game value of those coins, but it does change the end game market value of those coins if you still have them in your hand. And so as you purchase art, it drives up the value of art. And then those art cards in your hand are actually worth more money after they go past certain markers on the board. So it's a really interesting, crunchy game. And there's a kind of this main board area where you can pay to put your art on display in a museum. And that gives you certain bonuses and points, but now it's not in your hand. So it won't count toward your value at the end of the game, but it does count toward some significant end game points when you put it on that market. So yeah, it's a really crafty, well-designed economic game around the theme of art. I like it. Actually, it's one I wish I played more. And I just don't get it to the table as much as I'd like. And part of that is just maybe it's a little bit of a dry economy game, but I find it very fun and it's very simple. I don't think it's terribly hard to learn. Number 44 is War of the Ring, the card game by Ian Brody. It is kind of a co-op game. No, it's like a team game, put it that way. Ideally, it's best to play with 4 players, and you have 2 players that are playing as the Free Peoples and 2 players that are playing as like Sauron and Saruman, or some combination of the enemies in the Lord of the Rings. And each round you're revealing a chapter, which is kind of like a place in the game, and you're sort of playing cards in order to try to take over that area and have the most influence on it. And every place in the game usually is weighted toward the Free Peoples or the enemies in one way or another. And so you're sort of trying to do it and use your cards in such a way that you can like get the right places at the right time, like win the ones you're supposed to win easily. But at some point you have to make a move to defeat or win one of the places that's kind of more neutral, or the opponents, to really leverage the points in your direction. And I think it's a race to a certain point level. And so once somebody reaches that, the game ends. So it can end in any round. It's not a set number of rounds, but you're using the heroes and such from Lord of the Rings in their cards and their abilities to do things. And the cards from your hand, the cards in your hand, the ones you play, you actually use cards in your hand to then play those cards. Eventually, they go to discard, and they come back to your hand unless they are used. And if, a lot of times they're used for battle, they're lost out of the game for the rest of the game. So there's a lot of timing involved, but it's pretty strategic. It's a good example of the board game War of the Ring, but in a card game form. And I've got a couple of expansions, so you can play up to 6 players with 3 and 3 on the teams, and each player is playing as their own faction. So it's a really interesting game. I like it. Again, I'd probably play it more, but it's just getting the players to the table and finding enough that like Lord of the Rings and appreciate that IP enough to play it. Number 45 is Rococo, specifically the deluxe edition by Matthias Kramer, Stefan Mall, and Luis Mall. Rococo it's kind of area control, and it's kind of action selection, and it's kind of deck management in your hand. You have a deck of cards in your hand. You can upgrade those cards to get better folks, but you only have like 3 per round. So you're looking through your deck, picking the cards you want to use that round, and you're using those like 3 cards that round. And so that's what you're doing. You have to use all the cards in your deck before you get to your discard and then get them again. But whenever you buy a card or recruit another worker, the cards are the workers, and you recruit them, then you get to use them the round you recruit them. So getting a worker doesn't really lose you in action, but it does cost you money. And so money is a precious resource, as are the materials that you use to make the suits and dresses that you're making in the game, which you are then either placing on the board or you're selling to gain money that you can use to generate other actions. So it's a pretty fun game, and it's very beautiful. That's tool artwork and everything. It's a gorgeous game. So it's one of the bigger box games that's pretty easy to set up, get out and play. Probably on the heavier end of medium for most folks. I'd probably put it on the lighter end of medium for a board gamer generally. But it's very enjoyable. I think it's maybe a slightly underrated game, possibly. It's hard to judge what you would call underrated sometimes, but this one I feel like fits that bill. Okay, I'm trying to figure out my cards. Yep, I got it. Okay, so 46 is what we're on. Is The White Castle by Ezra S. and Shai S. Ezra C. and Shai S. Probably butchering those names, but The White Castle is, how would I describe this game? It's a dice selection. You're rolling dice, you're putting dice on these bridges, and they're going to, depending on the numbers, you're going to select from one end or the other because they're arranged from highest to lowest. If you select from the lower end, you get a less powerful action, but you get a bonus from doing that. And so there's a lot of tension, push and pull tension in this game as you're trying to put your meeples into the castle and then move them up into the castle to higher levels and categories, which will get you points. So really interesting, very well thought out, very well designed game that comes in a small box and offers a lot of almost chess-like tension, trying to figure out what to do with your people. It's not like chess. I mean, this is a lot more fun, I think, than chess would be, or at least for me. But it's an enjoyable strategic game. So that is The White Castle. Probably medium weight, I'd probably say, in general. Lots of depth of strategy. Number 47 is Maracaibo. This is designed by Alexander Pfister, the same one that designed Great Western Trail. You're sailing around the Caribbean. You are stopping, taking an action at a particular place. Sometimes you're making a delivery, which is going to be a little circle from your board that you put out onto the main board, and that's going to upgrade an action on your main board. Ultimately, what you're doing in this game is playing these cards. You're trying to purchase these cards that you're playing into your tableau, and those cards give you some benefit or power. It's fairly expensive, it's fairly tight, and you're also trying to leverage up your influence with either England, France, or Spain. It does have kind of a colonialism sort of aspect to it that might be distasteful for some people. But it is an enjoyable game, but there's a lot of moving parts and pieces to it. So it's colorful and it's pretty, but it probably is going to have a heavier rule set than some will enjoy exploring. I'd probably put it at the heavier end of medium, more so than a lighter end of heavy. But there might be some debate about that. Number 48 is Frosthaven by Isaac Childress. Very much like Gloomhaven, except a little bit more complexity and a little bit more between round decision making that adds to the story element of the game. But a little more expensive than Gloomhaven First Edition, a little less expensive than Gloomhaven Second Edition, but probably more complex than either of those. Probably the most complex of the Haven series of games. But it is quite fun, and I would say offers very much a similar experience to those others, maybe even with a little bit more complexity. Number 49 is Wormspan by Connie Vogelman. It's the last of the Span games. It is around the theme of dragons. Operates very similar to Wingspan and Finspan, albeit with slightly nuanced mechanics, but it's still engine building. If you like dragons and are entertained by them, then Finspan might be the one for you. There's actually, I think, a book, or not a book, but like a guide or an index that comes that talks about all the different dragons. And of course, it's like made up stuff, but it's fun. I enjoy it. I don't dislike it. It's actually my wife's favorite. She likes that one the best. I feel like it's one of the most giving of all the Wingspan, Finspan games. Like, I feel like you can really get your resources, just get so many, you got to figure out what to do with them. But it is my least favorite of them. However, it's still my 49, so it's not that bad. I enjoy playing it and will suggest it on a fairly regular basis. Number 50 is Wondrous Creatures by Yom CW. It is pretty, what do I call that? It's like resource management and tableau building for the most part. In some ways, I would argue it's kind of like the Span games to one degree, but it operates differently. You're placing a worker. Your worker will either let you gain resources or draw cards based on whatever resources it's next to. And then you're ultimately trying to play those cards in your tableau, and they will give you different things. Most of them are going to give you just an instant one-off thing you get to do. Others will have you recharge cards that between every time you have to collect all your workers back to play them, you only have 3. And eventually you have to take a turn where you have to collect those workers back, and then so you can reuse them again. When you do that, every recharge card you have, you can use to gain something. Could be points, could be more resources, whatever it might be. But it's a pretty fun game. I played it several times. I didn't really like it the first couple of times I played it, and then after I digested the rules a little better and played it a few more times, I was like, this is kind of a fun game. I found it to be maybe mildly addicting as I played it more and more, because the more I play it, the more I'm like, oh, I like this game. This is fun. And I've actually bought a copy and can teach it here whenever I get the chance. And not a lot of people seem to have heard about it a ton. So it was on BGA, Board Game Arena, and that's where I played it first, and then found a copy online, and I taught it at the last local friend con I had, and I'm looking forward to teaching it again because it's quite enjoyable. Number 51 is Earth by Maxine Tardif. This is a highly thematic game, in my opinion, where you're building a 4x4 tableau of cards, and they are going to be various plants that you're building, and earth or soil is your money, your currency in the game for the most part, although everything in this game is currency. You'll build little tree pieces onto certain cards, and that can be currency for certain actions. You will put these little cubes for seedlings, like you're growing plants on certain cards, and that can be currency for other things in the game. But ultimately, like once a player finishes their 16 by 16 tableau, that triggers the end game. I think everybody gets one more turn, something like that, and then the game's over. And so you kind of want to time it so that you kind of get pretty close to 16, because a lot of those cards you put down are going to help score you points at the end of the game, and you're going for these objectives that are kind of central to everybody, and the first one there gets the most points, sort of thing. So you want to, like, if you see somebody's really getting close to getting an objective, you might go after a different one so you can at least beat them to that. What you don't want is somebody to get all the objectives first, and then that's going to put you in a rough place point-wise, but where you're going to have to get points from your tableau instead of those objectives. But it's a fun game, very thematic and kind of educational in the sense that you really, all the cards have like little flavor text about the particular piece of shrubbery or whatever it is that they're representing in the game. Or I have an expansion that adds animals, so those add a little bit, another element to scoring in the game, and are pretty fun. They have like some fun meeples that go with the animal expansion that are make it pretty enjoyable. All right, number 52 is Nar by Thomas DuPont. And it's a small box game that is essentially you're playing as Vikings that are racing around this board to see who can get to 40 points the fastest. A lot of kind of almost set collection, but it's not really set collection. It's more like you're getting there's like 5 different color Vikings, and when you put a Viking down, say I already have 3 red ones, and I get another red one, I put it down, then I trigger the little symbol in the top right corner of all my red Vikings, and so I'm going to get stuff. So I want to keep a number of Vikings to trigger the most stuff, but when I get the cards that really score a lot of points, I have to give up certain Vikings in order to get those cards. So the push and pull tension to get racing around the board is to really time it so that you're making the most efficient use of gaining Vikings, but also getting rid of them to gain the tougher cards to get on the board. But that's Nar. It's pretty fun. It takes about an hour or less to play, even with 4 players. So good one. Good light game. Probably the heavier end of light, or the lighter end of medium. I hate to call it a light game overall, because I think if you're newish to games, it might be a little tougher to wrap your head around it. 53 is Let's Go to Japan by Josh Wood. You're essentially planning a vacation to Japan, and you're going to be traveling between Kyoto and what's the other city? I know it's Kyoto. I can't remember the name of the other city, but it's 2 cities in Japan that are major cities, and you're essentially drafting cards, and then you have to find a place to put it in your tableau, and you're kind of trying to match symbols up so you can get extra bonuses. But every time you travel from Kyoto to the other city, you have to have a train. So you don't have to have it right then when you're placing the card, but at the end of the game, when you do your kind of final scoring, all that's going to be revealed, and you're going to see how many times you have to travel. And if you have gotten bonuses enough that you can travel by train that you have collected during the game, they'll give you points. But if you don't have those bonuses, then you have to use a train to go from one city to the next, and it's going to be a negative point score whenever you have to use those trains that are just like common public service trains. But it's really fun, and all the places I think are legitimate places in Japan, and it's really enjoyable to kind of like plan it out. And pretty simple game to play, but could be good if you're trying to teach about planning. And I'd say a younger audience could play this game. It's probably medium, the lighter end of medium, most likely. But it's a fun, enjoyable game. And if you're planning a trip to Japan, it might be fun for trying to figure out what you want your plans to be. Number 54 is The Guild of Merchant Explorers by Matthew Dunstan and Brent Gilbert. This is, you're basically flipping a card that it's going to impact everybody, and it tells you like, this is where you can place cubes on the map. Everybody has the exact same map, and like you might turn over a card that has 3 ocean spaces in a line. So everyone on their map can place 3 ocean spaces in a line, and has to come from your central castle or where you've already placed cubes. But it's a puzzle, and it represents the cubes you place represent where you're exploring on your map. You play 4 rounds. So you're basically clearing all the cubes out between every round, but there are ways of establishing villages that can give you further out starting points from your central castle. And there's some global objectives that people are going after. First person to get them gets the most points, and everybody else after that gets less points when they get that objective. So it's a pretty interesting game. There's a couple of cards that are like there's a deck of cards that is like a very different sort of exploration. There's general exploration that are very simple, and everybody knows when those are coming out. But then there are these level 1, level 2, level 3, depending on what round you're in. In round 4, you're going to get to trigger all 3 of those, and then you're going to have one card that lets you pick which of those 3 that you get. But every time you flip one of those cards, every player will pick 2 cards off this deck. They'll have 2 different kind of exploration cards, and they get to pick one, and the other one goes back to a discard pile, and then that is your level 1. So every time that era 1 is turned over, assuming this is an era 1 you got, then you're going to get to do that form of exploration, and that's going to be different than everybody else's form, because they're all, as far as I know, they're all different. I don't think there's duplicates of cards in there. But yeah, it's a pretty simple game to play, but it's a lot of fun for the little puzzle that it offers. Number 55 is the Quacks of Quedlinburg by Wolfgang Warsch. This, again, is a bag builder. This is a push your luck bag builder, because you're going to be drawing these tokens out of your bag, your personal bag. You're going to put them in your pot, and whenever you draw too many of the same token in a row, you can bust. So you're kind of deciding when you want to stop drawing, and it's your choice. And so you can push your luck. You're like, I hope I'm getting a different one, but once I think you get like the 3rd of the same type of token in a row, then you bust. So it's like, do I keep what I have and I get to take 2 potential actions, or do I bust and I only get 1 action? But then you're ultimately buying more tokens to put in your bag and then use them to try to get further around your pot. It's like basically a track that goes like this in a pot, and you're trying to get as far down that as you can by diversifying your tokens and using them to leverage your pot and push your luck as far as you can. Number 56 is Campania by Yog Akase. And, ooh, it's a 6-player one. I just recently played this at a friend's house. I liked it. I'm not sure how much I'll like it long term, but I really liked it, and I really want to play it again. And I kind of think my wife will like it. But I'm trying to remember like what the mechanic was per se. If it was like a set collection or a dice manipulation thing. I know there's some action spaces you're going to, and you're trying to build up your tableau in some form or fashion, and you're trying to do the best job of it. So it had a fairly kind of unique way of selecting the actions and how that tableau building worked. And I like that it was 6 players, so you can play like a higher player count, which a lot of times will have an extra like 5th or 6th player. And so I thought this would be a great game for those venues. So I don't own it. I think it's a Asian designer, and I think it's not necessarily a common game in the American marketplace, but I would, after I play it a couple more times, I might consider trying to add it to my collection. It was quite fun. Number 57 is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, trick-taking game. This is designed by Byron Bornmuller. If you like spades, this is Lord of the Ring with cooperative spades. That's what it is. Cooperative spades with a Lord of the Rings theme. That might sound simple, but there's different chapters in the box, fairly small box, and every chapter will add a new character that could be somebody that comes up in that chapter of the game. Usually the characters kind of mimic like where you might see them in the story, The Lord of the Rings. And then there are like some bad things that can be influential on the game or make it tougher to win tricks in certain ways. So Lord of the Rings trick-taking game. I got the Two Towers, which is like a second edition of the game. We haven't played that one yet, but we haven't finished all the chapters in the first one. And I like spades, so I find it's a really fun way to play spades. Number 58 is Undergrove by Elizabeth Hargrave and Mark Wooten. This is essentially an action selection game. I think it's underrated. I think it just kind of flew under the radar and never really took off, but I think it's better than what people give it credit for. You are playing as a tree, which is kind of cool in and of itself, and you are trying to grow. So you're trying to establish roots. Those roots attach to mushrooms, and each mushroom out in the game has different powers. So any player can put down a mushroom, and any other player can end up attaching a root to that mushroom at some point. And you're just trying to use the nitrogen and elements in that mushroom to grow, attract carbon to your tree, so that you can grow your tree. And then there's a track, so you're ultimately trying to get up this kind of track to the top to end the game. And whoever has the most points, it's not the first one to the top of the track, but I think if you're the first one to the top of the track, you have a better than average point chance of getting the most points. But that's what triggers the end game. And then you count up points based on like the number of trees you grew, and some mushrooms that you've got a root system attached to could also score you end game points. But really fun. I've got like kind of a upgraded version of the game that's got like really nice mushroom tiles, and all the components are wood. So it's quite fun. But again, I think kind of underrated. I have a harder time getting into the table, but I don't think it's because it's not a good game. I think it's people aren't used to it, and it has a weird sort of like, it's not a co-op game, but you have to cooperate with other players, and it's kind of a system that doesn't feel like you have to wrap your brain around it just a little bit. But it is a very enjoyable game. If you like mushrooms, it is a game I would almost always suggest to someone who really loves mushrooms. A lot of fun color text on the mushrooms in the game, and the art is gorgeous. Number 59 is Lure by Satoru Nakamura. Lure is, it's actually kind of a re-implementation of an older game, but you're fishing and it's dice rolling. It's a very simple game. Probably takes about 10, probably 15, maybe 20 minutes to play. And you're putting fish out. Those fish have requirements to catch based on your dice rolls, numbers or whatever. And you're rolling dice. You have 5 as your player color. You play up to 5 players, and you have 5 dice that are 6-sided dice. Those you get them every round. You'll never not get those. And then you have 3 dice. If you have the expansion, if you don't have the expansion, you have 2. But if you have the expansion, you have 3 dice that are odd shaped. Like there's a 4-sided dice, there's a 12-sided dice, and there's a 20-sided dice. You can only use those at most every other round. You don't have to use them every round, but if you use them, then they set out a round before you get them back. And the catch is you're fishing. So every round, the fish are set out, and then everybody like decides how many dice am I going to use. And they put your hand out, and everybody reveals how many dice they're using at the same time. Whoever has the least amount of dice gets the fish first. However, if you have the least amount of dice, there's also potential you may not catch fish as well, because you might have lower number count. You might have a bad roll or whatever. You roll your dice, and then if there's a tie for number of dice, then everybody rolls their dice at the same. Everybody who's tied rolls their dice at the same time, and then the lower number gets to go first. And you catch all the fish you can catch. But if you don't catch any fish, you just get another lure to add. Lures can be like help you catch more fish, or they can be like a bonus for the end of the game or whatever. But they do a couple of different things. But you ultimately get lures when you don't catch fish, and occasionally there's some game things that can trigger everybody getting a lure. But at the end of the game, when that fish deck runs out, that's the end of the game. And you count up the points on all the fish you caught, and there's a little trophy mechanism in the game, at least for the expansion, that can add some more points. But it feels like fishing. You know, I'm pressing my luck in some way or another, either with trying to roll fewer dice or get more fish with fewer dice, or I'm just going to roll all my dice or a lot of dice, and I go last, but could be all the fish are caught by the time I go. And in that case, you don't even get a lure. You just don't get anything, but you didn't actually get the fish if all the fish are gone. So it's pushing your luck by trying to roll the most dice is actually maybe the hardest one, because you get nothing out of that. At least if you try to fish, you get a lure if you are unsuccessful. But that is lure. Number 60 is Skara Brae by Shem Phillips. It is resource management, the game. There are like 18 different little wooden resources in the game, and you are drafting these villagers, and they come out and they give you some stuff, and you're trying to use your resources wisely. As you gain, you have like an area you can store the resources you collect, and anytime your storage reaches a point, you have to shift the slider over, and the more that slider goes over, the more trash your village produces. And then that trash becomes stuff that gets stored, which could then lead you to getting more trash. And so you have to figure out how to get rid of that trash, use your resources to gain the things that are really valuable in the game, which are certain actions you might want to upgrade that help you get rid of trash. It's like a lot of, it's resource management in the game, but it's a lot of fun. It's colorful, and it's very enjoyable and very easy to set up and not that hard to learn and play in general. So probably the lighter end of medium is probably where I'd put that one. Number 61 is that right? 61? Yep. Number 61 is Tapestry by Jamie Stegmaier. Tapestry is, I guess, technically a civilization game. There might be argument about whether you consider it that. But as a civilization game goes, there's usually fairly complex games, and this one is fairly easy to play. You have 4 tracks. You're going to pick a track. You're going to pay the resources to move up your marker on that particular track, and you're going to gain the benefits that gives you. And rinse and repeat that. Every track does different things. But the art and the little buildings that are painted in this one are just absolutely gorgeous. All the civilizations are different, so every player is going to get to draft a civilization at the beginning of the game, and it's going to be very unique to that player, and that player, it's going to influence how that player plays. I do think at least one of the expansions, Arts and Architecture, is a must-have for this one. The base game is a tad bit dry if you don't have the Arts and Architecture expansion, so I think adding that should be your first expansion, but there are a couple other expansions that add little bits and pieces. Ultimately, beautiful game, well designed, decent amount of setup, so it takes a while to set up, but it plays, probably you could play in about 2 to 3 hours, I'd say. As Civilization goes, it feels lighter weight from a mechanical decision-making perspective, but it is quite a fun game. Number 62 is Harmonies by Johan Benvenuto, and it is a tableau builder for all intents and purposes. You got these little discs that represent either a green disc for like tree or plant, a wood disc representing like wood or the bark of a tree. It's got river discs that are blue. It's got these yellow discs that represent plains, and it's got red discs that represent cities, and gray discs that represent rocks. All of those different types of discs score points in different ways. That's kind of like the base of the game. But then how you configure and set them up on your board will also allow you to put these little cubes from animals that you have in front of you. You can have up to 4 of them, and when an animal's cubes are out on your display, you basically are going to get a certain number of points from the animal. So it's like a combination, kind of a puzzly tableau builder that is fairly simple to learn and probably might be appropriate for a younger audience, as long as they're not like going to eat the little cubes. Then you could probably dumb down the rules just slightly for younger kids, but it's a pretty fun puzzle for most folks. So it's a nice light game. Number 63 is the Castles of Mad King Ludwig by Ted Alspach. It's one of the older games in my collection. This one is, you are building a castle. So there's all these different tiles that are different rooms of a castle, and every round you're generally drafting a tile, or I shouldn't say drafting, you're paying for a tile. There's a market, and one player that rotates as the game goes along is going to put, they're going to set the market values on the tiles. They're set at different values, and they're going to decide which rooms are going to be worth what. And so ultimately, how you make money in the game is when you're the market manager and you're setting those tiles, when people buy those tiles to add to their castle, they're paying you. So you want to set the market carefully. You don't want to put it, oh, you guys want these rooms, I'm going to put these the highest price. Well, you might look at their thing and say they don't have money. The only room they would buy would be the lowest price one. But you know they buy that room if it's there. So you've got to make some money in one of the options that every player has. They don't have to buy a room. They can forego buying a room. They could just take $5,000 from the bank and not buy a room for their castle. Now, that's not going to help you get points, but it can help you get money that you can buy better rooms later, or wait till somebody else changes the market to where you can get the room that you're looking for. So lots of interesting complexity, and the fun of building your castle is just a really fun game. So I do enjoy that one. That is The Castles of the Mad King Ludwig. Number 64 is Modern Art by Rainer Knizia. And this is a bidding game. You're setting up a piece of art. There are multiple kinds of bidding styles, and you're putting art on display, and everyone's going to bid for it, and someone's going to win it. And that's going to change the market value of that person's art. It's going to go up. And so as a particular artist's art gets bid on, its value goes up, and that art becomes worth more money. And you play like 4 rounds of the game, I think. And so each round, whatever the art ended on the round before, that stays the same. So if that artist ended at like their art's worth 40, next round their art's still worth 40 at the end of the round. And so the bidding becomes a little more aggressive as the game goes on. You really got to do a little bit of math in your head to figure out, okay, what's this art worth and how much should I bid on it? And if you don't bid on any art, then you're never, like at the end of the round, you're going to sell your art and you're going to get the money back for it. So money is kind of the winner. That's the points in the game. And so it's a really interesting bidding game. So very fun, could be good, slightly modestly educational as far as teaching the value of things, possibly. But mostly I'd say it's just a fun game that has some social dynamics that are hard. I don't see recreated in a lot of other games. Number 65 is Stroganoff by Andreas Stedding. Now, in most cases, I would say setting up a game is kind of a hassle. It takes time. Mostly you want to have it set up, and then you can play the game and teach it. But Stroganoff is one that is so beautiful that I enjoy setting up the game. It's actually a fun part. I find it mildly therapeutic setting up the game. It's just fun putting out these beautiful art pieces out onto the board. It's also a fun economic game where the economy is kind of an odd one. You're paying in horses or you're paying in pelts, one of those two. But it's a beautiful game, and it's a little bit of set collection. Maybe, I don't know if I'd call it tableau building per se. It's more economic than it is anything else, but it is action selection is really what you're doing over the course of the game. But it's a lot of fun trying to accumulate points, and just the theme and the beauty of the game, I think, are what make it for me. If it didn't have that, if it was just the action selection, it probably would be not on my top 100. But the action selection and the mechanics are good enough with the art that pushes it up into this area of my top 100. All right, number 66 is Apex Theropod by Herschel Hoffmeyer. I kind of am a sucker for dinosaurs, and I've had a couple dinosaur games. I've had a hard time finding the ones I really like because I've gotten rid of one or two. But Apex Theropod sticks around. Its art is really good, like just phenomenal dinosaur art on the cards. And it's I'd say the game is okay. It's designed, I think, to play solo, but you can play with up to 6 players, and you're largely trying to develop the species of dinosaur that you choose to start with into a more aggressive, more dominant species, and eventually get better versions of that species and or other dinosaurs into kind of your, I guess, herd is what I'd call it. And you're ultimately trying to take on a big baddie toward the end of the game that you're hoping you can defeat with a little bit of push your luck element to the deck building, card development as the game goes on. So it has, it's not too terribly hard. I would say the rules probably could be done better, but they're not that hard, and it's a pretty fun game. If you like dinosaurs, I'd say thematically it's a really fun one to play. I don't know how authentic it is as far as them being real dinosaurs, but they look very dinosaur-y, and it is a highly enjoyable game, at least in my opinion, to play. But I also lose a lot, so that might say something, that even though I lose half the time, I still enjoy playing it because it's that push your luck element with hunting of things is pretty fun. Number 67 is Symbiose by Jeremy Partiniso and Christelle Partinico. I'm probably butchering the last name. Again, sorry. But Symbiose is a fun small box game. You are building a tableau. You're ultimately up like 8 cards in front of you. The 4 in the center are going to be scoring based on your tableau. The 2 on the outside are going to score points based on your neighbors to your left tableau on your left side, or the 2 on the outside are going to score your right neighbor's tableau. So you're trying to kind of manage your tableau, and there are like you can sometimes get rid of cards in your tableau before flipping other cards to try to mitigate points others are making off of you, and potentially set yourself up to be making the most points. The catch is once somebody has all 8 cards in their tableau revealed, then that's the end of the game, and everybody reveals whatever cards that they haven't yet flipped over, and then now you're just going to score based on whatever you have. So some cards just give outright points. Some cards are going to score points based on how many other of a certain type of card are in somebody's tableau or yours. So it's a pretty fun game. Nice little puzzle. Takes 20 minutes to play, maybe less than that. Number 68 is Flip 7 by Eric Olson. There's another one called Flip 7 with a Vengeance. I'd probably put them roughly in the same category. I wouldn't necessarily differentiate them as a game. They're roughly the same game. Flip 7 is a great party game. You're push your luck. You get a card in front of you. Everybody gets one card to start, and then the dealer, do you want me to hit or do you want to stay? If you stay, you're going to get the points on all the cards that are in front of you. If you hit, they hit you. As long as it's a different card, you're good. But if you get 2 of the same number card, you bust. You get 0 for that round. Everybody, you kind of keep doing that over and over again until somebody gets to 200 points. A round ends when either everybody's busted, or everybody's passed, stayed, or one player gets 7 different number cards in front of them, in which case they get the point value of those cards, plus they get to add 15 points on top of that. So it's kind of hard to do to get 7 different cards and not go bust, but if you push your luck hard enough, it's pretty fun, and it's a great party game. So that is Flip 7. Number 69 is Hegemony by Vangelis Bagiartakis and Varnavas Timotheo. Hegemony is just a phenomenal it's just a phenomenal achievement of game design. You really want to play with 4 players, or you can play with less. You can even play solo, but you want to play with 4 players because each player is playing as a particular either like middle class, working class, the capitalist, or the state, and every player is playing a different game. Like when you teach this game, is what's heavy about it. You have to teach 4 different games to the players because each one is playing a different game, and they win and they score points and they do things in different ways. But it all synergizes together, and you're a lot of push and pull. Ultimately to see which class can have the most points at the end of the game, and everybody's kind of going for their own objectives. It's a really well-designed game. It's heavy, probably takes 3, 4, maybe 5 hours to play, so it's very time-consuming, and it is a lot of rules and it's a lot of learning, but it is well worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze on this one. It's highly educational, I would say, if you are trying to teach the different classes. Like if I was a social studies teacher, I would absolutely be playing this in my classroom. Like that would be just a thing. We'd have an ongoing game that we might have to come back to every once in a while, but it would be one of our things where I divide my class and I have the different groups playing the different classes, and then rotating around and doing different things on teams, and maybe have the teams so each team gets to play every class over the course of a school year and kind of learn the different little bits and pieces of the economy because it's very well designed. But that is Hegemony, my number 69. My number 70 is Edo. It is a light party game, and you imagine you have a number line in front of you from 0 to 100. and everybody, it's co-op. Everybody gets a number, and with your number, you're trying to get your number to be in the same, you want it to be in order. So when everybody's placing their numbers down, you're not placing the number face up. You have your number, you're going to place it face down with your color on top of it, and you're going to say a thing. So there'll be a theme. So it might say your favorite Transformer. And so you might, let's say you have number 100. Well, you're going to say Optimus Prime. You know, it might be everybody's, or Bumblebee. Something that you think is everybody's. What's going to get people to say 100? Well, I think more, that's going to be the best one. Or, you know, 0, you might pick some obscure Transformer that you wouldn't, you know, most people have never heard of, or something like that. Somewhere in the middle might be something like Shock, Soundwave, or, you know, I'm making it up, but that's what you're doing in the game. So if you have 4 players, everybody gets that number card. You're trying to get those numbers to line up in order. So when we flip them over, the numbers are in order. Now, that's not too hard with 4 players, especially if the numbers aren't very close together. What gets harder is you start giving people 2 cards, 3 cards. And now you have to put all those numbers out there, and you want them all be in order. It gets pretty challenging. Or if you have like 8 to 10 players and each of them have a card and a number, now it gets really interesting. Even around this particular theme, trying to get the nuances of what those numbers, getting those numbers lined up in order is kind of hard, but it's a fun little party game. All right, number 71 is Scenery by Luke Allison, Peter Jostra, and Corne van Moorsel. Scenery is a tableau builder. It's kind of a tableau builder. You have this main area where you have these tiles that kind of look like the map tiles from, say, like a national park. And you, through various mechanisms of drafting, you're basically picking one of those, you're putting in your tableau, and there are various point scoring mechanisms as you build out your map. And so Scenery is very pretty. It's pretty easy to play. It's very time limited. So I'd say a game takes maybe an hour because you're only drafting like 12 tiles. So you don't have long to build this tableau and then get the most out of it. So it's a really enjoyable game, and it's a little bit of math involved. So if you don't like math, you probably wouldn't like this, because you have to kind of take elevations into consideration. But it is this is really fun. If you like hiking, you probably would like Scenery. It has it's like a hiking theme to it in the map building and all that. Number 72 is On Mars. This is by Vital Lacerda. Heavy, really excellent game. I really enjoy it every time I play it. Slightly more on the drier side than some of his other ones, but it is nicely themed around, you know, building up your colony on Mars. There's an element of the game that drives up toward the end game that everybody's working on together, and so it's not a co-op game, though. You are definitely trying to win with the most points and the most influence, but it is a very enjoyable game. This is 73. I got it right. Draft and Write Records by Pedro A. Alberto. Every player that's playing, I think you play up to 6 players, gets a stack of cards, like 6 cards, and you're going to draft one, and then you have a sheet that has different bubbles you fill in based on what you drafted, and you're going to fill in one of those bubbles. Now, initially, you're not going to get a whole lot out of that, but as the game goes along and you draft more cards and you fill in more bubbles, you're going to start triggering bonuses that are going to fill in other things on your board, and so it's kind of a bonus triggering game. But the drafting of the cards is pretty fun, and there are kind of some global goals that people can go after as well. So you're kind of drafting for those global goals, and you're also drafting to get the bonuses on your sheet. And there's just kind of a medley of places where you get points from, but it's a pretty enjoyable game. I think it's another one that's kind of overlooked. It's better than what people give it credit for. Number 74 is Tipperary by Gunter Bunkart. And this is newer to my collection. I actually ran into it on BGA, and then I added it to my collection because it was just an absolutely simple, like 12-round game where you do a spinner and you have 2 tiles at each location around the spinner. Your character symbol is going to be associated with one of the areas around that spinner. And when it gets spun, then you have 2 tiles to 2 tiles to choose from. You're going to pick one, you're going to put it in your board, and it's going to score for various things. Like there's different, there's probably 5 or 6 different space types, and each one kind of does a different thing. But you have a Tetranomo tile that's a weird shape, and you're going to put it on your board. Your base scoring is the largest rectangle that you create that is contiguous and has no holes in it. That includes your starting area. You get some points from surrounding the starting area, and in each of the there's several other scoring elements in the game. But it plays super fast. Move the round marker. Put out new tiles from this bag of tiles that's randomly drawn, and then you spin, and then you choose from those 2 tiles, put it in your area, do whatever overhead is required, which is usually very little. Super easy game to play, but you could probably play in about 15 minutes with 5 players. But it's a lot of fun. Number 75 is Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle-earth, and by Antoine Balza and Bruno Cathala. So Duel for Middle-earth it's like an IP remix of Seven Wonders Duel. If you're not familiar with that, then the thing to know about this game is there are essentially 3 win conditions. And as you play the game, it's over 3 rounds. You're drafting, you're basically selecting cards that you're putting in your tableau, and any of these cards are going to essentially help you move toward one of these 3 win conditions, or potentially give you resources, if nothing else. And the tension in the game is you can see what your partner is doing. If you start going toward a particular win condition, like your partner can see it. It's 2-player game only. They can see what you're going for, and so it behooves them to then draft cards that would keep you from achieving that goal. And that's the tension in the game. That's really where the game is you're dueling. You're trying to, you almost have to go for all 3 win conditions just to keep the other player from necessarily leveraging up on one. And you're trying to get the edge in one particular direction or another without being too quick to give away which one you're going for. And it could become obvious, and once it becomes obvious and it's the easiest one to go for, then it's like, how can I keep my partner from getting that? Or how can I get to my win condition before they get to theirs? Because they're going to have as much pressure if they're going after a singular 1 or 2 to keep you from getting whichever 1 or 2 you're going after. So it's a decent amount of tension. It's pretty rare that anybody would ever win in the first rounds. But winning in the second round is very possible if someone's not paying attention to what the other player is doing. But typically you get to the 3rd round. There is some kind of condition if you get through all 3 rounds and no one's outright won, there's a way of winning otherwise, but that rarely happens. Usually one of those 3 conditions gets met. Pretty fun game, and I think it's better than the Seven Wonders Duel. I like the theme of the Middle-earth around it, and I think they designed the game well with that theme in mind. Number 76 is Origin Story. This is by Jamie Stegmaier and Pete Wissinger. This is essentially spades, but rather than being cooperative, you are playing against an opponent, and you're either going to be a hero or a villain. There's 5 rounds, so spades over 5 rounds. Each round, you're going to be deciding whether you want to be a hero and gain a point for every trick you win, or be a villain and you gain 4 points if you win no tricks. There are some other elements to the game that play into some of that, how points are scored, and some special powers that are related to your superheroes. You have special powers that can influence this game of spades. But it's pretty creative. It's pretty fun. It plays pretty quick. I really didn't think I would like that game at all when I play tested it, but when they actually produced the physical copy of the game, it was way more fun than I thought. And it's in my top 100, so definitely will play it pretty easily, get it to the table, and try to play it with those that enjoy a game of spades. Number 77 is River of Gold by Keith Pigot, and it is a race? Hard to say. It's a pretty quick game. It runs pretty quick. There's 2 halves to the game, a first half and a second half. But both of them go by really quick, no matter what the player count is, because the number of tiles you start with that are when they run out is based on player count. So It's a very tight. You're kind of building up. I don't know if it's to say a tableau, but maybe a tableau on the main board. It's not your own tableau, but it's on the main board, because other people can benefit from some of the things you build, but then you get more benefits than they would from those things when other people use them. So it's not terribly hard to learn. It's a pretty quick rule set, I'd say, on the lighter end of medium. And it's a very just streamlined, well-designed game. I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy it quite a bit and look forward to playing it more. That's River Gold. Number 78 is Blood on the Clock Tower by Stephen Medway. I am not a huge social deduction gamer, but that Blood on the Clock Tower is essentially, in my mind, the best social deduction game out there. Our local game brew pub does they do Blood on the Clock Tower 2 nights of the week, and I mean it plays up to like, I don't know, 24, 26 players at a time, and pure social deduction. So you're getting a roll, and then you're going around and talking to people, and it's like trying to negotiate if you can give them some information, if you can trust the information they're giving you. Are they lying? Are they not lying? Who's the demon? Like, you're trying to uncover who the demon is, and ultimately the villagers are trying to vote the demon out, and they win that way. And then or the demon and his minions or her minions are trying to kill enough villagers that they win. So every night everybody goes to sleep and some people are killed, and so you are kind of trying to figure out why and who, and why are these people still surviving, and maybe is somebody lying to me? Who's lying to me? How do I figure that out? So pretty interesting social deduction. Number 79 is Wingspan Pocket by Elizabeth Hargrave. Probably don't think this ends up on my list next year, but so far I like it. I've played it a couple of times. I want to play it more, so it's probably high on my current want to play it more playlist. I am starting to think maybe it is a little unbalanced, but it is still enjoyable. It gives you a little bit of that Wingspan feel, but it doesn't take as long to play. Probably 20 minutes to play Wingspan Pocket, and you're just building one line of birds and doing it. I just think it's just some unbalance in the game where now we've started implementing a draft where we draft the cards, and we'll see if that helps. But if you just deal based on the rules, you just deal cards to everybody. There are certain cards that just seem like, oh, if you get one of those, you're almost always going to win, because it gives you some resource right out of the gate that is just incredibly hard to get otherwise, or you have to work toward it. And if you get it kind of for free right out of the gate, it's not typically fair. So I'd be curious to see if that ever makes it to like a tournament play, and if they change some things for that, because I know like with Wingspan, I think they take out the powerful birds in a tournament setting. There's like 1 to 2 birds that are like super powerful. You get them at the beginning of the game, you can almost guaranteed win the game. And so they would take those out in a tournament setting. But I wonder if they'll do something like that for Wingspan Pocket, or take those games out of the initial draft where you can only get harder things to play, and then you have to, if you draft one of those or draw one of those birds later, then you might be able to do it. So we'll see. It's a fun game. It's still fun, even though it feels a little unbalanced. Number 80 is Mycelia by J.J. Neville. You are sporing mushrooms and trying to basically grow your mushrooms, and I think you kill them or something. But every time you decay a mushroom, it becomes kind of like an extra power in your tableau, and then you're trying to leverage that towards getting to the end game and then having the most points through sporing mushrooms, and then moving around on the main player board based on how the wind blows. Oh, excuse me. There's a symbolic mechanism for deciding which way the wind is blowing when spores are released. So it's a pretty fun game. I don't know if I call it action collection. It's kind of an action collection, kind of a tableau builder, a little bit of both. But pretty enjoyable. It's not too terribly hard. I'd say medium weight for the most part. Number 81 is Viscounts of the West Kingdom by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. This is again in the West Kingdom series, so this is a deck building. This one's probably more pure deck building, although there is some worker placement and some worker manipulation on a board. Not really placement, but like you have one worker moving around to take an action, and those actions are somewhat not mitigated, but like the actions you take will be dictated to some degree by what the cards are on your player board. Because it's like you have a deck of cards, and as they move across your board, they give you symbols, and those symbols add to the power of whatever actions you're able to take. And so you're using those symbols in various ways to obtain the resources you need to take the main actions on the main board. So pretty fun little puzzly deck building game. And I haven't played it a lot recently, but it is pretty enjoyable. I did play it with expansions one time. In my opinion, it did not need any of the expansions. The base game is just fine and works really well. To me, the expansions felt like too much of stuff that was already there and fine and didn't need extra. So I don't always feel that way about every expansion. Some of them I feel like a game needs because it balances things out. But this is one where I felt the base game was just perfectly great and offers a lot of fun point scoring twists to it as you play. Number 82 is Thunder Road Vendetta by Dave Chalker and Brett Myers. It is Mad Max race to the end of the road with a ton of chaos and exploding cars and traps and whatnot. Pretty fun. It's not a game that takes itself seriously, but it is an enjoyable game, and if nothing else, even just for the storytelling bit of it. I mean, you're trying to win by getting to the end of the road, but it's you just know there's going to be chaos involved, and so I think everybody starts with like one or maybe two or three cars. I can't remember. So it's not like one car blows up and you're dead. It's like over the course of the game, if you lose all your cars, you're out of the race, but you're ultimately trying to take various push your luck chances to be the first one to the end of the track. Number 83 is Scythe by Jamie Stegmaier. I'm kind of shocked that this is 83 now, and probably will move back up at some point. It's just kind of gone up and down. I think mainly my interest just waned a little bit, and it'll most likely go back up because Scythe is such a great game. Like, it feels like a war game. It looks like a war game, but it's really an engine builder action selection game, and kind of in a Cold War setting, in an alternative, like kind of a Russian Nordic sort of area of the world. And so you got mechs and you have other things, but it's kind of designed to where like you really don't want to go out there and battle people too much. Maybe one particular faction is a little more likely to do that, but in general, you're trying to kind of time that real well. And mostly you're going to try to avoid people, but get into places where you can gather resources. And there are certain pieces like if you have your workers and somebody comes through and kills their workers, then it also destroys their popularity, which is their in-game multiplier for points in a number of categories. So it's a lot of there's a lot of nuance to the game that's pretty fun. A lot of expansions that add little bits and pieces of elements to the game that make it more fun. But Scythe is a good game. Probably not as hard to learn as probably what it looks. But it is a pretty heavy rule set. So I'd have to put it in the heavy category just from that standpoint. I might put it at the lighter end of heavy, but probably still in the heavy category because there are multiple players to learn, and each player has different abilities. Now, they're not like off the wall hard to negotiate the difference between those, but it's fairly significant. Pretty meaty game, pretty fun, very beautiful art. Number 84 is Sankore by Mandela Ferdinand Grandin and Fabio Lopiano. If I remember correctly, and it's been a while since I played this game, I don't own it. Sankore is a It's very colorful, it's very beautiful, and it's kind of like 4 or 5 different games in one, where it's like each section of the board offers a different sort of like mini game that you're playing to some degree. But it's all connected together by the main theme of the game. And I honestly can't remember wholly the theme. It's been a while since I played, but I do know that it was quite fun and enjoyable. And I'm probably making it sound more disconnected than it really was. It really felt very connected, much more so than I thought when I first read the rules. But there is a significant amount of rules overhead to learn for this game, and it's pretty. I'd say it's a pretty tough one to master most likely. But it was quite fun. So it's still in my top 100. I really want to play it again, like in the near future. If I can play it sometime in 2027, that would be great. I realize there's a lot left of this year, but I think this year is going by quick, and with teenagers in school and such, it's unlikely that I'm going to get as many games. I'll be more likely to get some of these other top 100s that I own to the table than I am to get some of the ones that are a little closer to the bottom, but I'd definitely like to get more plays in. Number 85 is Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux by Shem Phillips. It's called Redux because there is a original Shipwrights, which is somewhat dry and kind of missing some elements that it needed. Redux added some more of those elements. It's a pretty quick playing, what do you call it? Like, you're building ships, and you're ultimately trying to build ships worth the most points, and some things will kind of stack together to be multipliers. You're also building buildings, and they give you maybe a few points, but mostly they offer you some places to get more resources. And it's very tight. It's hard to develop the resource stuff you need to build ships. If you're up, there's 3 tracks. If you're the highest on a track at the end of a given round, you get a hero, which gives you another special ability, which sometimes is helpful and sometimes not. Even if you're not highest on the track, there's like this generic hero you can get. And actually that was probably the most commonly useful hero. The other 2 heroes can be useful. They're harder to get, but they're probably better as points at the end of the game than they are useful between rounds. But that's Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux. Number 96. Did I say 96? 86. Number 86 is Isle of Cats by Frank West. Isle of Cats is tetraonymo cats that you're placing on your board, and you're trying to connect the most number of cats of a single color. There's like 5 different colors, and that gives you more points. Higher multiplier, the more cats you have of the same color that are connecting. You're also trying to cover up rats on your boat so that they don't take away from points. And there's these other cards that give you points for various things that if you collect them during the card drafting phase, you could potentially play them, and sometimes they give anybody points that meets the criteria. Sometimes they just give you points if they meet the criteria. But it's just a fun, simple, kind of puzzly game that's themed around cats, which makes it more fun because you're playing cats that look like Tetris shapes to your board. Number 87 is Escape Plan by Vital Lacerda. You are playing as a criminal, and you are trying to win the game by having the most cash at the end of the game. You have to avoid cops. You have to not get caught. And it's like a lot of Lacerdas, it's fairly, there's some level of complication to the game and the mechanics and learning it. It's probably on the simpler side compared to some of his other games, but it was quite fun. I didn't know what to expect from it the first time I played it, but I liked it. There's a newer one called, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's kind of a criminal-based kind of game. And I like this one better. This one was more like you're a criminal by yourself, just trying to do the most with your escape plan. And I just feel like the theme was a little tighter and better than the one that was came out most recently. Speakeasy, that's what it was. Which Speakeasy's fine. I played it once, but it's one of those. It's like if I never play it again, I felt like the juice didn't feel worth the squeeze on that one. Whereas Escape Plan, I definitely would play that one again. Number 88 is Marvel Champions by Michael Boggs, Nate French, and Caleb Grace. If there was any reason that this didn't hit the table more, it's really because it takes a while to play. I want to say like 2 hours with 2 players. If you add more players, you probably are going to take longer. Maybe not quite as much longer, but you're going to take longer. You're beating a baddie and you're playing with you play as a character. So say I play as Thor. I have a deck that is, I can build myself, but it's typically going to be tuned to Thor. Some people I've heard go online and get like the idea of what is the best deck to build for this character, and they play with that, which could be fun. I like to do my own deck building because I think it's more fun. You pay for the cards with cards. So the cards in your hand are your resource to pay for cards from your hand, and ultimately you're cycling through your deck because you're not getting more cards. You're just cycling through the cards that you have in your deck, and you're trying to either thwart the bad guy's villain or defeat him, get his power down. In your if you play when your card is in its alter ego form, you're generally thwarting his plans. When it's in your superhero form, you're doing damage to him. And it's that there's a flipping back and forth between alter ego and your superhero form. You want to time that well. The heroes, the villains are hard to defeat. Even when you start with the basic one, it's fairly challenging. And when you get to more complicated things, it can become even more challenging. And then they have boxes that are like story, like different chapters of the Marvel universe, so to speak. But it's a really fun game to play. I enjoy it every time I play it, and again, I play it more if I have more gamers in my family and people that also like Marvel, because you kind of got to be a little bit of a fan of superheroes to really enjoy it. Otherwise, it probably feels like this is not a theme I enjoy. I really enjoy the theme. I think the decks are very well designed to feel a little bit like how that superhero operates, which I think is pretty creative. And beating the villain feels like you did something when you actually defeat them, which I like that about games that are hard. Number 89 is Pampero. Apparently I didn't write down the designer. Julio, I can't remember his name. I forgot to write the designer on that one. But I know I think he worked with Viticulture a little bit, or at least this is influenced by some of Viticulture's games. Pampero feels kind of like maybe a lighter version of a Viticulture game. There's some nuance there. It doesn't feel quite like one, but it's close. Very beautiful, high production quality, kind of hard to get to the table, lots of setup, but it's fun around the theme of building windmills and managing energy to score the most points by the end of the game. But it's a little bit area control and a little bit resource management and action selection. So pretty fun game. Probably not hard to find, but I happened to get a copy because I found it at half price. Not at half price books, but like for half price on one of the online retailers that I use on a regular basis. And I was like, well, I got to get that. It's usually it's like $180 typically to get the game. Number 90 is Black Rose Wars by Marco Montanaro. Marco Montanaro. And it is another battle royale game, kind of similar to Blood Rage, except this one's even more battle royale, where you're just playing as one of these 4 characters that you're a magical character of some sort with a bent toward a certain type of magic, and you're going into this room called the Black Rose Room or Arena, and the Black Rose itself can also go up in power and potentially, I think, win the game if other players don't do a good job. But you're ultimately going in there and you're trying to peck away at other players and kind of knock them out. Now, when you get killed as your character, you just go back to your starting room and you can go back out and just keep playing. So it's not like but that person who killed you got a trophy, and that's going to help them potentially win the game. So you're trying to go in there, kill as many as you can, trying to set traps and protection spells and shoot fireballs and do all the things that the cards let you do. You're going to draft more magic cards that go into your deck over the course of the game. And then there's once the Black Rose Room, a certain point in the game, the Black Rose Room becomes an option. And if you can get there and get one of the cards from the Black Rose Room, it's like a really powerful spell deck. And most you're usually going to get in a single game is one. It might even be a rule that says you can only ever have one. But you get one of those cards and you find a way to set that spell out and do the most with it, then it's going to give you a really good bonus if you can get to that room and do it. But pretty fun battle royale, lots of creativity, lots of deck building or deck development, and just a good, let's get in here and just shoot each other with magic and, kind of pretend we're in Harry Potter or something for the next hour, an hour and a half. Last 10 here, we have number 91 is Marvel Zombies by Fabio Curie and Michael Schnall. There's another game called Zombicide, and this is kind of an IP that's very similar to that. Co-op game, lots of fun. If you like Marvel, if you like co-op, trying to figure out how to work together using your different powers, this is a really fun game. Some of the zombies are Marvel zombies, and so they're going to have those powers that are kind of like in a zombified form. But it's a really fun game to play, and kind of like Robinson Crusoe, I feel like there's always a fun story that comes out of it as you're trying to accomplish the objective of the game and get out alive. I don't think this one everybody has to get out alive. I think somebody can die and it's okay. Maybe I could be wrong about that. But I think you do have to accomplish the objective, whatever that is. So but it's fun. All the zombies are different, powerful. I think it's a fairly pricey game. I don't own this one, but it's definitely one I would play again because it's just really fun. It's not high enough on my top 100 that I'm willing to put the investment in getting it, and it would have to be one where it's like my family was begging to play it, that I would pay the whatever $300+ to get all the zombies and stuff. And then there's minis, and you kind of want to paint the minis, which I haven't really gotten too much into miniature painting, so I'd have to probably find a way to get them painted, and so that's more cost. So yeah, great game though, highly recommend it. If you do have a friend who owns this game and has the painted minis and all that stuff, it's a blast. It's just a blast to play. Number 92 is Founders of Gloomhaven by Isaac Childers. This really doesn't have anything to do gameplay wise with Gloomhaven. It's a completely different game. It's just set in that universe. And I would say this is probably, when I think of what are my most underrated games, this ranks among one of my most underrated games. So it's extremely, it's how do I say it? Like, you're building stuff. It's got a little bit of a dry feel to it, but you're building stuff out on a board, and you have to use resources that other players are building out on the board as well. And it's got a trickle-down point system that's fairly unique, and it's a little bit challenging to wrap your head around if it's the first time you run into something like this. So there's some complexity to learning the rules. Whatever character you're playing with or population is unique, and so while they all kind of, it's not really asymmetrical per se, but they do have, like, you have a certain power specific to your population, and as the game progresses, you kind of unlock a few different things that make it progress even further. Ultimately, the game ends when 7 of these main buildings get built and all the resources are delivered to them. Then that ends the game, and whoever has the most points at that point wins the game. It's fairly complex. This is either be the lower end of heavy or the higher end of medium weight is how I put this one, especially with learning the rules. But it is a fun game, and I love teaching it and getting folks to play it because I feel like the card drafting system and the mechanisms for action selection are pretty unique in their own right. Number 90, that was what number was that? That was 92. So we are on 93, which is Far Away by Johannes Gubi and Corentin Labrat. And this is a small box game in which you're gonna build a tableau of cards, 8 cards going out. The cards are square cards, which is kind of unique. You're gonna build the tableau going to the left, and then you actually score it going to the right. So you build your tableau, you turn all your cards face down, and you start with the one on the right, and you turn it face up, and it's gonna score points. But a lot of times those point scoring mechanisms require certain symbols in your tableau. Now, when you're building forward, you could have gotten these special temple cards that can give you symbols. But if you didn't get many of those, when you're scoring backwards, if you aren't really understanding how the game works, you could have gotten those symbols earlier in the game, but you're like, oh, now I'm going backwards, and it's not turned over yet, so it doesn't count as being in my tableau until I turn it over. So it's a really interesting game where you kind of like at the time where you want to get certain cards and where you want those point scoring cards to be in your tableau. But it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun game that stretches your brain in a different way is how I describe that. Number 94 is The Pirates of Maracaibo by Ralph Beinhardt, Ryan Hendrickson, and Alexander Pfister. It is kind of like Maracaibo, but this one's a little bit lighter and simpler. You're still picking actions that you're taking, and you're moving your boat along the board. It's still a rondel. It's just easier, I think, as far as gameplay goes, and some of the mechanics that are a little more complicated in Maracaibo aren't really in this one. You're still building cards, and it kind of feels like you're sailing across an ocean, and this one's a little more giving in that you can get resources accrued much faster, so it feels easier to get stuff. My wife liked this one a lot better than she likes Maracaibo. I like Maracaibo because I like the crunch of it, but this one is a little bit more approachable, and I like this one quite a bit too. I enjoyed it. I've probably played it about 30 or 40 times, and I enjoy doing it. So Pirates of Maracaibo, if you want something a little lighter than Maracaibo that has a similar feel. Number 95 is The Taverns of Tiefenthal by Wolfgang Warsch. This is a deck building game. You're largely building a deck. It's themed around a tavern. Everybody has their own tavern. You're sort of trying to develop your tavern, but you're basically developing your deck. And you're trying to, every time you do the deck flipping phase, you're flipping over cards until all your guest visitor spots are filled. Once that happens, you stop flipping cards. So you kind of want to create more chairs and more spots, or limit the number of visitors that remain in your deck by getting rid of the cheap ones and having only the better ones there, so that when you draw your visitors out, you get the best visitors. So you play over multiple rounds. There's a lot of fun stuff as far as the card drafting and some bonus in between actions that you can take, and it's fun. I like to play it once or twice a year. It's dice drafting. So you're drafting. You have 4 dice. You're going to draft 4 dice at the beginning of every round, and you're going to use those to take actions, in addition to the deck building that you do. And so that's it's like after you flipped out all your guests in deck, then you can take those actions, and then certain cards that you have drafted and now have in your tableau or have played this round will have different impacts based on the number of the dice you place and where you place them. But you have a little coaster that has like beer stains on it, and that's what you pass around. You draft your dice, you pass it around, so it's thematically pretty fun. Number 96 is Targi by Andreas Steiger, and it is a 2-player only game. You're building a tableau. Targi are kind of like these Arabian peoples that you're building into your tableau. They're going to score points in one way or another. There's like 5 different types of Targi. So the unique thing about the game board is it's like a 5x5, and so you have 4 figurines, and you're going to put them at 3 spaces on the game board, which triangulated is going to target at most 2 spaces in the center area. So you're going to take those 3 actions plus the 2 spaces that your figurines triangulate to. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if I put 2 side by side and only have 1 space that they're all pointing to? Well, guess what? You take 1 less action that way. So you probably don't want to do that. But you could if there was something in particular that you needed to do. But when you place one of your figurines, your opponent, one, can't put their figurine on that space, nor are they allowed to put it on the space across from you. So as people place their figurines, then the number of spaces, whoever that last player to place the figurine is, has a very limited number of spaces to place it on. So pretty tight battle for points in a phone booth kind of thing. Number 97 is Ready, Set, Bet by John D. Clare. This is a betting game. I don't mean betting that you have to bet real money, but you get betting tokens in the game. It's a horse race. There's going to be an app that you can use that like will call the race for you. Or if you like, I love to call the race. I think it's a blast. Roll the dice, call which horses are moving forward, make up some narrative about it, and call it out loud and just kind of make fun of the bets and stuff as they go on the board. But you have this whole betting board. And once a bet's placed in a place, no one else can place it there. You play 4 rounds of betting on horses to see who can end up with the most money at the end of the game. And it requires a lot of yelling and a lot of fun. So great party game that plays up to like 9 players, I think. Number 98 is Kutna, the City of Silver by Andrzej Bystrom, Peter Kasheva, and Pavel Jovshis. It is a kind of an economic... Is it action selection? I think of it as an economic game because there's these sliders in the game that are kind of determine the economy. And when you build a building, certain pieces of the economy, the value of different things in the game changes. Like when you build a mine, the value changes again. And so it's the way those work, like certain things go down and what their value is, and certain things go up. And so the game is kind of pushing you to build certain types of things in order to make other types of things you have worth more. And it is that you have this deck of cards, but each card has a top and a bottom. And so there's some tension in like, if I use this action in a given round, and I think you take 2 actions every turn. So if I use this action, I can't use the bottom. And some of those actions, you only get like 1 per potential round. So if you use the top part, you're foregoing the bottom part for that round. And so there's a lot of push and pull with the action selection system in here. But it's a pretty fun game. It's one of those that I really need to play it about 5 or 6 more times before I know kind of like where it lands. If it stays in my 100, it might go up on my top 100. But I do like the game. I do find it quite enjoyable. Number 99 is Dune Imperium Uprising by Paul Dennen. And there is an original Dune Imperium, but that one's a little drier. Uprising has the sandworms and a little more dynamics to it, and I have a couple of expansions and probably will add another one. It's not my favorite style of game, but I love the Dune theme. I've read the book. I enjoy the theme a lot. I feel like this game does dig into the theme pretty well, and I really like that. So it makes my top 100. Thematically, it is hard to beat. It is kind of a race to up the reputation track. You're trying to get 10 before other players, and first one there gets it. And so just all the mechanics of the game work toward that end in some way, and every sort of asymmetrical piece of the game is you're trying to find a different path to get to the same end goal of 10 reputation. So pretty fun game. A little bit of subterfuge included in there, which makes sense thematically. If you understand the Dune IP, you know that political piece of the game makes a lot of sense. And last but not least, my number 100 game is Woodcraft by Vladimir Suki and Ross Arnold. Again, this is probably one I want to play it 5 or 6 more times to see where it really lands. But this is largely an action selection game. What's kind of unique is that with Woodcraft, you have dice of different colors, green, brown, and yellow, I believe. And you have these saw tokens. You can cut your dice. So if I have a 5, but I really need a 3 and a 2, I can use a saw token, cut my dice, and now I get a 3 and a 2 dice. So I got 2 dice. I can use those for different things. Or I really need a 6, and all I have is a 4 and a 2. Well, if I have a glue token, I can glue those together, and now I can glue my 4, 2 together and get a 6. And so I can use that for whatever I need it for. So there's a lot of that's a neat little twist to the game. In order to develop resources, one of the things you kind of want to do is grow trees. If I grow a yellow tree, I can get yellow dice. If I grow a green tree, I get green dice. If I grow a brown tree, I get brown dice. And those give me more dice for other turns that I can either cut or glue together, depending on what I'm trying to do in the game and the bonuses I'm going for. But it's kind of an interesting theme. Blueberries are the money in the game, which is kind of odd, but it's kind of cute too and unique. So it's one of those games that I would even maybe consider getting some upgrades for down the way, but I haven't quite decided if it's a game I am going to keep forever or eventually move on from. So I kind of want to play it like 4 or 5 more times, and then I'll decide, I will keep that, and I might upgrade it to make it like the real squishy blueberries, because that would be more fun. But if I move on from it, I won't mess with it. I'll just trade it for something else. But it is an enjoyable game and a lot of resource management involved. So that is Woodcraft. And that is my top 100 games for 2026. If you made it through this list, congratulations. I hope you try some of these games, or some of them piqued your interest at least. And if you have questions about any of them or want to try them out online, hit me up with a comment. I can send you, if I have your BGA tag, I can send you an invite on BGA sometime if you want to try something out. Feel free to message me and ask questions to set up a virtual game. But otherwise, thank you for watching Unraveled Game Thoughts and my top 100 for 2026.